The Meeting of Fate. Are you, Rias? Issei titled his head curiously while staring at a taller, crimson-haired woman in front of him. The woman chuckled when hearing the misunderstanding. No, but you were close. I'll give you another chance. You can't be her mother. Being amused, Sirzechs questioned this. What do you mean? Why couldn't I be? You're too young and beautiful. Being blunt, Issei watched as Sirzechs began blushing after hearing that. I'm going to guess, older sister. Smiling, still blushing from the compliment, Sirzechs nodded. Yes, I was just visiting her for family visits. Issei nodded before turning around. Well, have a good time. I heard that Rias is a very intelligent and very sophisticated woman. I'm guessing you're the same, if not better. Enjoying this little interaction, Sirzechs had to ask, wait, where are you going? Oh, I was just going to class. Sirzechs Lucifer, one of the mightiest women in the entire world, had a single problem to her life that created a massive hole. Interactions. She never received many interactions as her only person that she could talk with consistently was her best friend maid Grafia. Just this short interaction had wanted her to continue speaking with this individual. During this entire family visit, not many had even wanted to speak with her as they were too engrossed with their own issues. Wait, could we talk a little bit more while we walk to your class? Rias' class is also in that direction. Issei smiled and nodded, sure, come on. Sirzechs walked along with Issei, noticing the way he would get some disgusted stares from other students, specifically female students. Sirzechs was very confused. Why do these women stare at you with disgust? Freezing slightly, Issei wasn't pleased with hearing that and was becoming nervous with speaking. This was a woman with beauty that surpassed even Rias in his eyes, and here he was about to lose respect from her. People see me as a disgusting pervert for the way that I act around here. Issei was going to go into details of what he does. Sirzechs looked astonished in hearing that. That's not how people should be treated. Everyone has their preferences in who they tend to like. You're just more open compared to the normal person in who they like. Isn't it human nature to be a little perverted? Yeah, but people don't really see that way. Seeing Issei watching the stares that he would receive from the others with a somber expression, Sirzechs decided to lighten the mood. What else do you do during your time here besides studying and doing well in classes? Sirzechs was being very generous in saying Issei did really well in classes. Issei was just barely above average in academics, but he smiled in hearing the compliment anyways. I sometimes doodle on some pieces of paper during lectures. Isn't that, like, bad? If you ever sit through a lecture here, you'll understand. Sirzechs chuckled, or is it because you just don't want to behave? Hey, all of you know I'm very on top of my game during class. I may fall asleep here and there. That's what I expect from most students. Occasionally, even Rias falls asleep during class. It's inevitable for many people to do so. I fear for the dear life of me, how will I be able to stand working a 9-5 when I can't even handle a single lecture here? Sirzechs smiled with amusement. She was enjoying this conversation. They turned the corner of the hallway, and the first thing they saw was a large classroom with Rias' class on one side and Issei's class on the other side. Unbeknownst to both, Sirzechs' face continued having a smile when knowing that she would be able to see both Rias and Issei, two people that she knew of in this school. Sona was in a different class, and she already had her big sister bothering her. Would you look at that, we both have the same destination. Oh shit, I forgot today was presentation day. Fuck, I spent all night thinking I had nothing to do. Issei began panicking and checked the time and ran into the classroom to make some bullshit up at a project. Hopefully, the teacher would grade it as participation rather than perfection. Sirzechs, meanwhile, began hysterically laughing at Issei's unfortunate situation. She couldn't handle it and began dropping to the ground in laughter. This was the first time she had ever seen someone panic on missing a project, and not only that, watching him switch his entire demeanor was hilarious to her. This was just perfect to her. After a little bit, the teacher began looking at all the students' project in Issei's class. Sirzechs noticed this while watching Rias continue learning about trigonometry. She directed her attention to Issei's class and couldn't help but glance all around to find Issei. Once she found Issei, she covered her mouth in pure shock and to stop herself from bursting into laughter. Grafia, her best friend, noticed this and looked at where Sirzechs was looking at and had the same reaction. While everyone else in Issei's class had made a small miniature catapult with sticks, spoons, and other household items, Issei made his catapult with 2 rubber bands, and that's it. However, what truly got to Sirzechs and Grafia was that Issei looked so confident, to only crumble upon seeing the teacher's disapproval. Sirzechs didn't want to look mean to Issei at laughing, but this was just hilarious to her. After a little bit when classes were dismissed, Sirzechs ran after Issei before she could lost her sights on him. Adding another person to continuously speak with as a friend was something that she really wanted. The more friends the better, right? Issei. The brunette turned around. Oh, Rias' big sister. Oh wait, I forgot to tell you my name. Sirzechs blushed in embarrassment. My name is Sirzechs. Oh, nice to meet ya. Smiling at his enthusiastic demeanor, Sirzechs was astonished that Issei was still able to remain positive even after failing his project. Are you okay even after that incident? Issei knew that Sirzechs was speaking about him failing his project. I'm fine. Failing a single project won't absolutely kill me. I'll just have to make sure to work extra hard on the next one. Are you sure? Yeah. With that, the two remained in silence before Sirzechs shyly pulled out her phone. Having the latest model of the most expensive phone out currently, she handed it to Issei and asked, "Could I have your number, please?" Issei's brain stopped working for a second. One of the most beautiful women he has ever seen in his life was asking for his phone number. What the hell was this day? Maybe failing the project, but getting this opportunity balanced out. Sure, but why do you want my number? I wanted to have more people to interact with. If you haven't noticed, I only have a couple of people I speak with. Most of them are from my family. Issei nodded and added his number in. Here you go, now we're going to become the bestest of friends. Smiling with Issei, she gently hugged him. I can't wait for us to become the bestest of friends. Separating, Issei simply patted Sirzechs' head and walked away. Can't wait to text you. Blushing from enjoying the head pat, Sirzechs held her phone with both hands while staring at Issei's contact information. I can't wait to tell Grafia about this and rub it all over her face. Best friends already. Did you know Grafia had given me 5 pieces of pancakes to eat? I can't believe she would be so generous. Sirzechs was on her bed, face on the pillow, and had her phone in front of her. Her entire bed was easily larger than most middle-class bedrooms. She noticed Issei typing to her and squealed in excitement. It had been a couple months since they spoke, and now they were keeping tabs with each other every single day. Someone must have been in a happy mood. I wonder what has been happening to make her so happy. I'm so happy. Usually she would give me only a couple of pancakes and some orange juice to go with it. Now she said I can have double it and double the glass of orange juice. So I may have missed school again. Furrowing her brows, Sirzechs angrily began typing. That's the 3rd time this month. How many times have I told you to stop playing video games all night long? Hey, I can't help it. Sighing in disappointment, Sirzechs couldn't help but chuckle slightly and think of the situation as Issei being clumsy like always. It's okay, what will you do now? I don't know, continue talking with you if you want. Of course I would love to. Sirzechs decided to be bold today. She clicked the call button before waiting for Issei to pick up. Issei picked up the call and looked as if he just woke up. Hey Sirzechs, I'm surprised that you decided to call me. What's up? I just wanted to call you. She didn't know what else to say. She did have paperwork to finish, but she could push those for later. If she needs to, she could have Grafia to help out a little bit. We just have to stay silent or my mom will find out that I missed school and I'll have my phone taken away. You're nearly an adult and you're afraid of your mother. Aren't you afraid of your mother? Tache. Sirzechs, do you want to see that new movie at the theater? Sirzechs tilted her head in confusion before asking, there's a new movie coming out. Yeah, there's multiple movies coming out. Sirzechs widened her eyes before pouting. Why didn't Rias tell me about this? I wanted to know about these movies beforehand. Issei smiled warmly before asking, there's this new comedy romance movie coming out. It's a sequel to another amazing movie. Do you want to watch it? My other friends are doing a couple of things, so I decided to come to ask you to watch it with me. Sirzechs remained silent, which sent Issei into a state of panic. It's okay if you don't want to watch it with me. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. I think I'll have to get going. Wait, I didn't say I wouldn't want to watch it with you. I would love to watch it with you. I can't wait to see it. When is it? It's tomorrow right after my school. I'll pick you up. We're going to crush this movie. I will not cry. It's a comedy romance movie. Still, I won't cry if there is sad things. Issei knew that those were going to be Sirzech's last words before something bad was going to happen. "Oh shit, my mom is coming, I need to hide, I'll call you later." Ending the call, Sirzechs squealed in excitement with knowing that she would be able to see Issei in person again. She couldn't wait. "Sirzechs, come on, paperwork has to be done." "Grafia, could you help me please?" Grafia busted the door open to see Sirzechs with her feet in the air and swinging them like an excited schoolgirl. Seeing her best friend like that, Grafia asked, "What got you so excited?" "Issei." "What, did he confess? You do know you have to wait another year before it becomes legal somewhat." Blushing from embarrassment from what Grafia said, Sirzechs pouted before speaking. "Hey, wait, I forgot he's a human. Damn it, that's beside the point. He invited me to watch the newest movie coming out, can't you believe it?" Grafia sighed in relief with the invitation being a friend type thing. "It was about time that he invited you out to somewhere. I just have to make sure you don't step over the line. Devil rules and human rules are very different still even after all those wars." Skipping to the afternoon after school, Issei was seen with a frown on his face. Waiting in front of the school with a couple of bruises, Issei was caught again by the kendo club. This time he didn't even see anything. They blamed him simply because they found him around the area. He tried to protest, but he was brutally beaten. Seeing a beautiful sports car colored in red showing up in front of the school, everyone noticed the window being pulled down and Sirzechs with her sunglasses and a large smile was seen. However, that smile quickly turned into a worried expression when seeing Issei with bruises, frowning, and had an expression of hurt on his face. Getting out of the car, Sirzechs ran towards Issei and looked at him. "Issei, what happened?" Forcing a smile, Issei looked at Sirzechs. "I tripped and fell down the stairs. It hurt a little bit, but are you ready to go?" Sirzechs could easily see that Issei was faking the smile. She didn't want to push too much and decided to let it go for now. However, she would take notice of this. She will investigate this. Noticing the stairs, Sirzechs simply grabbed Issei by the arm and brought him inside of her car. "So, do you know where you're going? How long is it before we have to watch the movie?" Issei looked at his phone. "In 3 hours. Why?" "We're going to explore the entire town. Ready?" "What?" Slamming her foot onto the gas pedal, Issei gripped onto the bottom of his seat as he was pushed all the way back into the seat. Noticing how fast they began accelerating, Issei closed his eyes as Sirzechs began screaming in happiness. "Come on, let's roll out." "Slow down, I'm going to fucking die." Grabbing his hand and smiling, Sirzechs had one hand on the steering wheel and zooming by. Using her magic, she made sure that her car would go undetected by the police officers nearby. "I bought the car, I'm sure as hell I'm about to explore the car. That also means how fast it can go. I bought the speedometer and I'm sure as hell I'm about to use it." Movie time. Sitting down at the theater, Issei had popcorn in his lap and ready to eat them. That was until Sirzechs shoved her whole hand inside of Issei's bag of popcorn and took basically half of them and shoved all of them into her mouth like a child. Issei stared at her. "That was like half of the bag." Sirzechs laughed at seeing Issei's reaction. It was perfect. She giggled before she began choking on the amount of popcorn she had consumed. Issei, quick to act, patted her back hard and watched as she spewed out some of the popcorn. "Thanks for that. It would have been a very sad death if I were to die from choking." Sirzechs wasn't just about to use magic in front of Issei. "You wasted all those popcorn pieces." Issei slumped against the seat and began comically tearing up. "I spent money on that." Sirzechs smiled warmth in seeing Issei being so sensitive. Everything that this child did was weird and it would usually make her day. SHHH, the movie is starting. Sitting down and watching the movie, Sirzechs was emotionally ready for the movie. As the movie went on, Issei began getting tired. The bruises and the running in school had caught up to him as his eyes began shutting. Beginning to sway from side to side, Issei finally landed his head onto Sirzechs' shoulder. Sirzechs noticed this and carefully brought his head down to her lap and began caressing his head. If he was going to sleep, Sirzechs would allow him to sleep somewhat comfortably, especially after seeing his horrible state before coming to the movies. Taking her chances, she carefully began checking Issei's bruises. Noticing the many bruises, she concluded that they were from physical harm. Frowning deeply, Sirzechs was not going to allow this to continue. She would end this abuse when she gets the chance. For now, she was going to enjoy this moment with Issei. Blushing seeing Issei's peaceful expression, Sirzechs turned her attention back to the movie and enjoyed the movie. After a little while of watching the movie, Sirzechs smiled in seeing the ending with slow tears building up in her eyes in seeing the death of both lovers. Quickly, she began hearing snores underneath her and giggled in seeing Issei being very peaceful. "All right, how do I wake him up?" Slapping him gently, Issei groaned a little before turning over and continued sleeping. "But I don't want to wake him up, he looks so peaceful sleeping here." Seeing the entire audience beginning to take their leave, Sirzechs began to get desperate as she didn't want to wake Issei up and interrupt his sleep, but at the same time, she didn't want to get in trouble with the staff. She didn't want to get banned from the theater as she noticed a couple more movies that she wanted to watch with Issei. Deciding to hit both birds with one stone, she lifted Issei up gently and began carrying him. Applying some magic to go unnoticed by everyone, Sirzechs began walking out of the theater before she was stopped by someone at the entrance of the theater. "What are you doing with that boy?" Grafia stood in front of Sirzechs with a stern expression. "Issei may have decided to fall asleep during the movie, and I'm carrying him into my car." Grafia facepalmed. "Do you know how creepy you sound?" "What do you mean? I'm just being a very helpful friend." "Think for a second. You're a mature, elegant woman who looks to be in her 30s in human years carrying a boy who looks to be in high school. You both don't look anything alike, and from the outside perspective, it would have looked like you were kidnapping him." Sirzechs blinked a couple of times before looking at Issei. "Oh, I see what you mean. Wait, Issei still thinks of me being in university." Seeing how naive he is from how you two would converse on the phone, I wouldn't doubt it. Walking over to Sirzechs and rubbing Issei's head, "It's time to wake him up." Using a little bit of magic, she sent a quick burst of cold air onto Issei, disrupting his sleep and waking him up. "Also, I suggest putting him down." Quickly, Sirzechs placed Issei on the ground and watched as he began processing where he is. This isn't the movie. Did I fall asleep in the middle of the hallway again?" Sirzechs knelt down and poked his nose. "You decided to skip the entire movie. How sleepy were you?" "I wasn't sleepy." Sirzechs looked at him with a doubtful expression. "Okay, maybe I was playing a little bit of Dark Souls 2 during the night. I was stuck with fighting against Sir Alan and his walk back to his boss fight, who decided that it was a good idea of having powerful enemies and a long walk to his arena was a good idea." "Issei, how many times have I told you to not be playing video games all night long?" Grafia scolded Issei as he was surprised to see the woman in front of him. "Grafia, this is a surprise. I never thought I would see you here." Grafia smirked before quickly realizing what Issei was doing. "You're not changing the subject. I should let your mother know that her son is ruining his health with staying up all night long playing those ridiculous games of his." "Not his mother." Quickly, Issei looked at Grafia with pleading eyes. "Please don't do that. I haven't noticed, but you look far more beautiful in person than on camera." Trying to flatter the stern woman, Grafia simply chuckled from his attempt. "If you want to flatter me, tell me things I don't get told every day. However, I won't tell your mother. If I hear this again, I will tell her to make sure you are grounded." Sirzechs, feeling as though she is being ignored, pouted and slightly squeezed Issei's hand. Her slight squeeze turned into immense pain for Issei. "Ouch, what was that for?" Quickly taking her chance in changing the subject, Sirzechs asked, "Do I look more beautiful in person?" "Yeah, haven't you already asked me this multiple of times during our conversations online?" Smiling in glee, Sirzechs began walking with Issei and Grafia was right behind. "Well, it's already getting dark outside. I guess I will be walking back home." "Who said you're walking back home?" Sirzechs continued walking towards her car. "I will be dropping you off at your home, plus I want to make sure you don't get in any trouble." Shrugging his shoulders, getting dropped off only meant less work for him. Walking towards the nice sports car, Issei sat in the back. Grafia looked at Sirzechs and asked, "What's wrong? You seem to be less cheerful." "Grafia, tell Rias that I need her to observe how Issei is treated in school." Sirzechs lost all her former cheerful tone and it was replaced with authority. "What's wrong? Something must have happened for you to ask that." Sirzechs knew that Grafia was someone that she could trust the most in the world with her concerns. Issei had bruises and cuts on his body. You should have seen the sheer sadness his face showed before showing up with me to the movies. It was disheartening to say the least. Don't let him know that we are doing this and also don't ask him why he has them. I already did and he doesn't want to let us know. Grafia, hearing the pain that Issei was going through, nodded. I will let Rias know of your orders soon enough. Now, let's go back to the car. The boy is waiting to go home. His mother must be getting worried of his absence now. Problem: date failed. You want to go on a date with me? Yuma blushed as she looked at Issei. Yes. Squinting his eyes, Issei's head was having all type of buzzers going off. I don't even know you. I don't even know where you live. I don't even know where you are from. Actually, why are you even talking to me? Didn't you just see the group of girls from before screaming at me? How what? Thinking a little more clearly, most women, after hearing of what I usually do, would stay away from me. If you don't know who I am, then when you do, what's going to stop you from doing the same? Wait, I do know who you are. Then who am I? A very sophisticated individual. Issei looked at her with a blank expression. Are you shitting me? You don't even know who I am. That's all I need to say. If you wanted to hang out, it would have worked. Wait, we can hang out, I promise. I'm sorry, but I have someone who is very impatient with. Oh, there she is texting me. Sirzech's text dinged in his phone. Checking the text, he was shocked to see her politely asking him to show up. Usually she would just scream at him with a bunch of angry emoji faces. Yuma, while Issei was looking at her, had a nasty glare while having an expression of disgust, as if Issei was a worthless peasant who's beneath her. Glancing back at the woman, Issei simply turned around and walked away. Yuma was left speechless that she was actually rejected. This wasn't possible in her eyes. Issei was stated to be the largest pervert that dreamed of having a girlfriend, but here he was throwing that chance, the chance that he would only get once, away with little to no regret within her eyes. She wanted to shift into her fallen angel form and kill off Issei right here and right now, but she had a feeling that if she did so with little to no plan or a barrier around them, she would be sensed by the devils within the area and be killed off with the rest of her group. Taking precautions, Rainier backed away and disappeared from sight. Issei glanced behind him once more and noticed that Yuma was gone. Blinking a couple of times before shrugging his shoulders, Issei continued on his way before noticing Sirzechs right in front of him in her sports car. How did she find him? Issei, is this where you have been all this time? How the hell did you find me? Do we have our locations on at all times? Issei opened his phone to check if he had any apps that did share his location. Nervously chuckling, Sirzechs responded, I don't really know how I found you. I decided to go on a little detour from our original pickup place. Sirzechs knew where Issei was by simply using her immense supernatural speed to travel the entire city before finding Issei and getting in her sports car a little further away from him and remaining undetected. Alright, ready to watch the Avatar, The Last Transformer. What the fuck are we watching? Is this some kind of bootleg? I found it on the web and decided to watch it at a free theater. Issei looked bamboozled. There is no way that we are going to watch a movie that consists of the names of two different already good franchises. Come on, it can't be that bad. I already watched the trailer and only saw a couple problems, but they won't take away our fun. Opening the passenger seat by reaching towards the door, Sirzechs patted the seat for Issei. Sighing to himself, Sirzechs didn't know what she was getting into. Bootleg movies never prove to do well for entertainment, especially when they confuse the fuck out of their audience. You know what, I'm not even going to say anything else. Sitting in the car with Sirzechs, Issei held onto the seat for dear life, knowing what was about to happen. Skirt. And the car's wheels already began spinning out. Also, I noticed that you were speaking with another woman. Sirzechs' tone began shifting slightly to being more aggressive. Who was she? Was she a classmate or someone who was making fun of you? Honestly, I don't even know. She was asking me out for a date. Sirzechs frowned when hearing that. What do you mean? Did you take her on her offer? No, it just seemed so set up that I felt as if she had lost a game with her friends to ask me out. I didn't even know her until she asked me that, and then she also didn't know me. Sighing in relief, Sirzechs squealed before slamming her leg right into the gas pedal, effectively breaking it in the process. Oh shit. Issei widened his eyes even further and looked right into Sirzechs' eyes before saying, It was nice knowing you, Sirzechs, before closing his eyes and waiting for the inevitable. Laughing at seeing Issei being so fearful, Sirzechs simply used her magic without it being noticeable by anyone, besides if they were in the supernatural world, and continued speeding up the car. All that was being heard was the screams of a happy woman and the screams of a man that was waiting for the inevitable. I'm going to fucking die. Calm down, this is the fun that the youth need. After watching the movie, Issei and Sirzechs walked out of the small shady theater. Sirzechs looked destroyed while Issei remained neutral. He expected that the movie was going to be terrible, which is why he wasn't let down by seeing the Gmod-type characters and objects being flung around. Sirzechs was utterly destroyed. Watching the main character glitch through the surface of Mars and randomly appearing in the sky multiple times had destroyed her mood for movies. Let's go to somewhere else next time. Now let's watch another movie here. Issei enjoyed watching Sirzechs pout at him before starting up her car. I will not come here again. Looks like I will have to invite Grafia, could you tell her? Never mind, I will come. Sirzechs didn't want Grafia to take away her time from Issei. This boy was the only other person besides Ajuka, Grafia, and her family to speak with her. Not only that, but thanks to Issei being also free most of the day, Sirzechs would be able to always contact him during the times when he is awake. It had been 3 months since they have known each other, and Issei was right under Grafia and Ajuka as being her best friend. Screw it, he was in the same tier as them in her eyes, as Ajuka was becoming too busy lately to hang out with her and Grafia was just Grafia. Hey Issei, have you ever loved something so much that you dream of having it every single night, wondering what you are missing to not obtain it? Yes, I dreamt of being like Goku, and next thing you know, my alarm clock woke me up. Do you know how much I want to be able to scream and power up before beating the shit out of people? Chuckling at his response, Sirzechs shook her head. Regular things, not unrealistic things. Fine, I did want to be loved by someone. I dreamt of being loved by someone so much to the point where I sleep dreaming of having a girlfriend. Issei wanted to be loved by a woman. He wanted to feel the care that a woman could give him. Sirzechs slowed the car down and widened her eyes. His dream is just like mine. I want to be loved by a man. I want to feel the personal connection with my spouse and know that I can speak with them about anything that I want. I dream of being loved every night. Sirzechs had grown such a reputation in the underworld as being this behemoth of a devil during the Devil Civil War, and combine that with her being the most powerful devil there is to date, she was feared by all. Her neutral expression would send shivers down anyone who came into contact with her. One was feared by women for being a pervert, one was feared by men for being a monster. Well, life is unpredictable. One day, maybe that woman of my dreams will show up in front of my house. Sirzechs warmly smiled. I hope it does happen. The wholesome moment was interrupted when a car randomly started beeping behind them. And the atmosphere was ruined, and Sirzechs glared into her car's mirror before slamming her foot on the gas pedal. Time for round 2. Not again. He's dying tonight. Sirzechs was sitting on her bed thinking to herself, okay girl, so today has been a very huge success. First, I was able to watch a movie with Issei. Second, I was able to understand that his dreams are similar to mine. Finally, I was able to steer the steering wheel and make Issei land on top of me. It was so funny seeing him get flustered. Grafia opened the door to see Sirzechs hugging her pillow while staring at her phone. Issei really got you thinking about him constantly. Sirzechs screamed in fear before glaring at Grafia. You should have told me that you were entering the room. And not scare you, yeah, no thanks. Anyways, I just wanted to let you know, if Issei ever asks to visit your home, let him know that you live very far and that your house is being redone. What? I understand that I shouldn't allow him to enter my house since the only way to enter from the human world is to teleport here. However, telling him some ridiculous lies would be dishonest. Grafia sat right next to Sirzechs and explained, think about it this way. If you say you're from out of town, he will feel bad and think more highly of you for showing up to hang out with him knowing how far you live. If you also say your house is being redone, then he wouldn't want to show up to not disturb anything being done in the house. Sirzechs, when hearing that she would be able to make Issei think of her more highly, nodded her head and sinisterly grinned. Maybe lying is a good thing. If he asks you for your age, then let him know that you're 20. Actually, this reminded Sirzechs of a concern that she's been having, and it continues to grow. Sirzechs is known to be one of the most powerful beings in the world and known to have countless enemies that would do anything to destroy her. If Issei is seen with her, then there's no telling what her enemies would do to gain an advantage on her. Sirzechs didn't care as much about herself, but rather the safety of Issei. He was just a simple, innocent, and clumsy boy that didn't deserve the harm. Grafia, do you have any small teleportation circles that could transport me to Issei whenever he needs my help? Grafia looked confused in why she would randomly ask her this, but when looking at the concern on her face, Grafia connected the dots within seconds and nodded. Teleporting to Sirzechs' office and grabbing a couple of small cards that would fit nicely in Issei's pocket, Grafia teleported back and gave them to Sirzechs. Got them here. Great, whenever he feels the need or whenever he wants to see me, this will light up and I will show up. This is perfect. Sirzechs jumped up in the air celebrating, knowing that she was able to secure Issei's safety. Now here is the true problem, how will you give them to him? Also, don't use all of them. Sirzechs sinisterly smirked before teleporting away. Grafia stood standing right in front of where Sirzechs was before thinking to herself about where Sirzechs went. Hold up, there is no way Sirzechs would get that desperate. Grafia denied the thought of her breaking into Issei's room. However, her sinister smirk was causing her to think otherwise. Sirzechs may have been a mature young woman, but her mind would frequently convert her into a childish adult at times. Sirzechs soon returned with only a few flyers in her hand. All right, problem solved. What did you do? I teleported into Issei's room while he was asleep and shoved a bunch of these flyers into his backpack. Not only that, I placed a couple of them into the back of his phone case. I have to be 100% sure that he would be totally fine if he were to become desperate in front of a supernatural being. Not creepy at all, Sirzechs. We have to talk about some limitations with your connection with Issei. What did I do wrong? I'm only taking precautions so Issei doesn't get hurt. Not knowing what you did wrong is another problem. Time for Professor Grafia in teaching you common sense. Waking up and yawning, Issei got ready to leave his home. Doing his daily routine, Issei walked out of his house and began walking towards his school. Today was going to be a very uneventful day. He didn't have any plans with Sirzechs or his other two friends. I wonder, should I get a donut or should I save my money, entertainment or smartness? Taking another step forward, Issei sighed before taking a look at the time from his phone. What is this weird paper on my phone? Stuck on his phone was a small card that had a teleportation circle unique to Sirzechs. I don't even know how this got here. However, his thoughts were interrupted as the space surrounding him began distorting. What the fuck? Being frozen and looking around, Issei began panicking before turning his head to some footsteps approaching. Finally, it took a while, but I have singled you out of humanity. This is the perfect time to end you. Yuma, what the hell are you talking about? Slowly, Yuma's warm grin transformed into a wicked grin while she transformed into her true form. Spreading her black wings into the air while floating in the sky, she simply laughed at Issei's question. Disrespecting me the other day had angered me to the point where I just want nothing more than you being dead. What better way to help my feelings than killing you myself? Forming a light spear, Rainier began to reel her hand back to snipe Issei's heart. Wait, what the fuck are you? Issei needed a way to die down the situation. His confusion was replaced with fear as he looked around to try and find something to help him. However, he wasn't able to find anything as they were inside an alternate dimension. Simple, I'm just better than you. Did I ever tell you that you look beautiful? This beauty is something to die for. Rainier threw the spear at speeds Issei couldn't react to. Feeling immense pain in his midsection, Issei looked down to see his entire stomach being replaced with an empty hole. Coughing blood, Issei immediately dropped to the ground and turned his attention to Rainier. Hysterically laughing, Rainier continued degrading him. Such a pathetic way to die, a stomach missing and a heart stolen by yours truly. I can't die like this. Issei tried to get up. Blood was spewing out of his body, forming a puddle. His vision was becoming blurry as he could only continue staring into the endless sky. Sirzechs, looks like I won't be talking to you again. Rainier watched as Issei slowly began sitting up. Oh, would you look at that? The little soldier can take a little bit of pain. You won't get away with this. You won't see the light of day. Someone will get you, Issei could say before he fell over once more and finally began losing the light in his eyes. Thinking to himself, Issei could only remember the times with Sirzechs, the only friend that Issei had where he felt as if he wasn't being judged, where he felt safe and comfortable speaking his mind with. Smirking to himself, sorry Sirzechs, better luck next time. I hope you achieve your dreams. That was when one of the flyers began glowing. Someone was coming. Rainier felt a huge power approaching the area. The power felt unbelievably huge as she froze in the middle of the sky, her eyes widen in sensing the power. This power? Who is this? Azazel isn't this powerful. Appearing through a magic circle, Sirzechs beamed with a smile, thinking that Issei was thinking about her. Issei, what's wrong? Did you miss? Sirzechs stopped speaking when seeing Issei's lifeless body on the ground. Humanoid destruction. Issei, he can't be dead. Tears began piling in her eyes as she began remembering all the times she spent thinking about him. All the days she would speak with him, hang out with him, play with him were all flashing through her eyes. Her worst fears had come true as the one thing she didn't want to lose had vanished. She didn't want to believe it. This must have been a nightmare. He can't die. Issei promised to be there for her. She can't lose Issei. She can't lose one of her best friends. Rainier was looking upon the very fear that she didn't want to happen. Another powerful being catching onto her plan. Rainier watched as Sirzechs dropped to Issei's dead body and lifted him up. I will make this woman who did this to you suffer. It was as if doomsday was here. The ground began shaking, the weather began changing as dark clouds began circling around the entire place. The barrier that once stood to mask Sirzechs and Rainier was long gone. Dark crimson energy began engulfing the entire area as Sirzechs began transforming. Each part of her body began changing to the very thing that made her the super devil that she was. Each second that passed by, the ground crumbled and shook as violently as if a massive earthquake had struck the town. Shattering building nearby, Sirzechs couldn't control herself and continued powering up. Her body began becoming her destruction. This was the form that brought even the gods and goddess down to their knees. Becoming destruction incarnate, this was her true form. Standing in front of Rainier was Sirzechs in her humanoid destruction form. Carefully, Sirzechs placed Issei, with her hands and being careful in manipulating her destruction to not incinerate Issei, onto the ground and snapped her head towards Rainier. Snapping her fingers, another barrier formed around them, and this one made sure to prevent anyone from escaping. One step was all she took, and the entire surface that they stood on cracked to millions of pieces. The sheer pressure that was being emitted from Sirzechs was beginning to burn away Rainier. Rainier tried to use her wings to fly away, but Sirzechs appeared right behind her and waved her hands through the wings. Rainier screamed as the moment Sirzechs' hand came in contact, they were erased. Rainier backed up, stumbling upon the cracks on the ground and fell onto her back while beginning to crawl back. Sirzechs began walking towards Rainier, with each step echoing throughout the barrier. Please, I didn't mean to kill him. He didn't deserve to die. Sirzechs reeled her fist back and punched right through Rainier's right shoulder. I wanted to keep him with me. Rainier knew there was no escape. Azazel wouldn't be able to handle this woman, let alone even come near her. Words weren't effective as Sirzechs was in her own world. Without any hesitation, seeing as though there was no point in torturing knowing that it wouldn't bring Issei back, Sirzechs kicked Rainier's head out of existence as her body exploded with feathers. Sirzechs looked to Issei's dead body and noticed that her barrier was beginning to crack from her expanding power. Grabbing Issei's body and teleporting towards the edge of the town, Sirzechs caressed his head as she placed him on her lap. I'm not letting you die. Looking back at the town itself from a distance on top of a hill, she noticed a massive crack she formed in the middle of the town that must have injured or even killed many. Being snapped out of her thoughts when she heard the sounds of someone near her, Sirzechs looked at the person with her disheveled hair and bloodshot eyes. And he won't be dying. Grafia appeared right next to Sirzechs, sitting down and patting Issei's head. Issei, my poor little boy, what happened to you? Looking at the huge hole within Issei's midsection, Grafia couldn't help but become an emotional mess similar to Sirzechs. He was such an innocent boy that was clumsy and adorable when he made mistakes. What did he do to deserve this? A fallen angel got to him, but don't worry, her very existence has been exterminated, Sirzechs said with an emotionless tone. Continuing to hold Issei, Sirzechs finally began reverting back to her regular form. There was no need to remain in that form, as the longer she did, the more chaos the supernatural world would get into. She didn't want anyone to bother her when she was dealing with this issue. You still have 2 pawn pieces, right? Grafia asked as Sirzechs nodded immediately. Grafia sighed. If Issei was gone for good, the world would have a berserk Sirzechs and her queen ready to cause chaos. The entire fallen angel faction would have been wiped out that same day if this were to have happened. I was just about to use them on him. Sirzechs grabbed 2 pawn pieces from her pocket and placed them onto Issei's chest. Please, let your life be in my hands as you will serve the Lucifer. The 2 pawn pieces entered Issei's dead body as Sirzechs began watching with hope and seeing Issei waking up and hugging her. Seeing the huge hole in his chest being closed up slowly, Sirzechs squealed and lifted Issei up. He's mine. What will you do with the fallen? Sirzechs' eyes burned with destruction as she looked back at the chaos she brought to the town. Azazel and I will speak with each other. If he is innocent, there will be no issues between us. I will come as well. Grafia wasn't going to allow her king to leave on her own, especially when this involved Issei. The three had grown very close together over the past couple of months with how clingy Sirzechs was. If one was going down, the others will come to save that one. Breaking out of her thoughts, Sirzechs looked back at the sleeping Issei and began lightly poking him. Sooner or later, Grafia watched as Sirzechs began nuzzling Issei's face and giggling. Now that he is a devil, getting a teasing grind, Grafia whispered into Sirzechs' ears, he's free for you to have, if you know what I mean. Blushing, Sirzechs bonked Grafia's head as she scoffed and teleported back to her mansion. However, Sirzechs couldn't help but giggle a little, processing the thought. Imagine her and Issei together forever and ever. Issei, I can't wait for you to wake up. I always wanted to show you my house. Grafia was seen laughing, noticing that Sirzechs had left. I wonder what I should do to make the two embarrassed. Should I push Sirzechs into Issei when they are close and force a kiss to happen? Should I accidentally steal Sirzechs' clothing when they are sleeping together? Grafia was ready to make Sirzechs' life a living hell from now on. Little Issei and the great big world. Opening his eyes, Issei instantly reached his arm out towards the ceiling. Oh shit, I swear I was just about to shit myself. I hate dreaming and seeing a toilet in the dream. Finally noticing his surroundings and seeing that he wasn't in the street anymore, Issei looked around to see where he was. Noticing the crimson bed, the crimson currents that surround the bed, the overly large bed that he was alone in, and the dark black ceiling, Issei felt as if he was trapped. Crawling over to the edge and moving the curtains, Issei sighed in relief, seeing that he could escape. Wait, that doesn't explain how I'm alive. I swear I had a hole in my stomach. This must have meant that he didn't die. There was no way that he could be alive after that. Unless Issei had superpowers, scratching himself gently to see if his skin would heal the small scratch. Issei didn't see anything. Okay, first option it is. It was just a nightmare. Walking towards the door in the middle of the room, Issei ignored all of the furniture and decorations that filled the room. Opening the door quietly, Issei was met with a very large and open hallway that stretched endlessly in his perception. This looks to be a trap. There is no way that a hallway would be this empty and this large. Beginning to slowly walk to the right, Issei noticed many doors. He didn't even want to open any of these doors. He wanted to find the exit before anything. 1 step. 2 steps. Holy shit, Issei could hear his footsteps. If he could hear his footsteps, not only that, but he heard his footsteps echoing throughout the hallway, leaving him to think that anyone could hear him snooping around. Time for Detective Issei. Where the hell is the exit? Having enough, Issei just couldn't handle being so slow and began running at full speed. I'm never gonna let myself be caught. Running faster and faster, Issei watched as a door opened right in front of him and bang! He slammed head straight into the door and fell right onto his back. What? Sirzechs took a step out into the hallway to see Issei on the ground. Issei. Time skip. Opening his eyes again, this time Issei was met with Sirzechs right in front of him. Screaming and backing away, Issei banged his head into the end of the bed, hitting the frame of it. You really like getting hit in the head, don't you? Sirzechs grabbed Issei by his hands and brought him closer to her. Calm down, Issei, it's just me. Sirzechs, where am I? You're in my room, do you like it? Looking around, Issei remembered this room as the same room he woke up in. It looks way too good, I didn't know you were this rich. Wait, she was rich. Frowning slightly, Issei pointed his finger at Sirzechs accusingly. You were this rich, yet you made me buy the tickets and the food for the movie. Not fair at all. Smiling warmly, Sirzechs gently squeezed Issei's hands. I know, but you looked so adorable doing all that. I just didn't want to ruin your moment back then. Issei noticed that Sirzechs was still holding his hand and blushed, but he shook his head gently before asking, how did I even get here? Sirzechs was questioning herself internally of whether she should tell Issei the truth of what happened bluntly rather than slowly telling him, or should she come up with a lie to ease him into his situation before explaining the supernatural world to him, then tell him the truth once he's prepared. In all honesty, the second option was too much work for her and she didn't want to do that. Issei, you died. Huh? You remember that black-feathered woman? In an instant, Issei knew where this was going. However, he asked immediately, how am I alive? If she did kill me, how am I still in one piece? Sirzechs, seeing Issei immediately agreeing with his death, sighed in relief and not needing to show him that he did indeed die, but now had a more difficult situation to explain. I may or may not have stuffed a couple of teleportation pieces of papers into your clothing, bag, and phone. Staring at her blankly, Issei responded, "That was you. I had a feeling it was you. I got a little paranoid and decided to teleport into your room while you were sleeping and stuff them within." Blinking a couple of times, Issei was a little creeped out by that. "We're getting off track, back to the main subject. When that woman had killed you, I teleported right in front of you. Seeing your death, I may or may not have snapped. However, that's beside the point. I revived you into serving me as a devil for your entire life." Processing everything that Sirzechs was saying, Issei asked, "So, you revived me into being your slave?" "It sounds terrible, I know, but that's just how we describe those we revive. In reality, you're just given a second chance, and now I can always know where you go to make sure you're safe." Issei needed a little more confirmation. Sirzechs saw his expression and decided to release her demonic wings. Issei widened his eyes and in a couple of seconds believed everything that Sirzechs said. Why would she lie to him? Not only that, but having confirmation that he did die and now knowing that his best friend revived him, it made him feel much better. "So no slave relationship, right?" "Yes, no slave relationship, just you and me being," rushing towards him and hugging him tightly, best of friends for forever. She wrapped her wings around him and Issei finally began noticing the patterns in her wings and how soft they were. Reaching out and gently caressing her wings, Sirzechs gently blushed in seeing Issei being so fascinated about something that she had. "These wings are so freaking cool. You also have them too. I don't know how to explain how to show them to you though." Issei stares in his eyes. "Really, I love being a devil. Did you also know that being a devil allows for more strength, speed, and the ability to do more magic?" Squealing in excitement, Issei really wanted to know how to do magic so he could replicate Goku when he does his Kamehameha. "Can you teach me, can you please?" "Of course." Speaking of which, Sirzechs was rich and she was a devil. Did that mean she was very powerful? "How powerful are you?" Sirzechs was hesitant in answering, but seeing Issei's innocent eyes, she couldn't help but indulge him slightly. Releasing nearly her full power in her base form, Sirzechs instantly regretted it when she watched Issei begin trembling in fear before passing out. His body, just from being in proximity to Sirzechs, was beginning to break down from the sheer power she exerted. Issei. Sirzechs' idea of training. Sirzechs held Issei on her lap while humming a soft tune. She enjoyed having Issei near her, now having him right in front of her and in her home was amazing. Looking down at him, Sirzechs grabbed Issei's cheek and began pulling it gently. She watched as Issei began wiggling in his sleep from the disruption, but continued to sleep without any worries. "I wonder if I did this." Pinching his cheek gently, Issei scrunched his face and tried to turn over, but Sirzechs restrained him from doing so. Giggling at seeing this, Sirzechs couldn't help but continue bothering Issei as he slept, but doing enough so where he wouldn't wake up. To Sirzechs, Issei was the most amusing thing in the world to her. How can someone so clumsy, clueless, and idiotic be so amusing and charming to her? Maybe it had to do with the fact that she didn't know many like how she knew Issei, but that was beside the point. However, it was about time to wake Issei up. Poking him continuously until he finally woke up, Sirzechs looked down at him so the first thing he would see is her face again. "Sirzechs, why did you wake me up? I was having such a good dream." "What were you dreaming about?" "A beautiful woman with crimson hair who saved me." Sirzechs blushed an atomic red before Issei began chuckling. "Just kidding." Sirzechs quickly scrunched her brows before giving Issei a whack on the head. "Oh, what was that for?" "Don't what me, you knew what you were doing." Pouting and turning her head from Issei, Sirzechs continued staring off in the distance. "I did not need to be hit on the head. You deserved it for teasing me like that." Sirzechs then thought of something while looking at Issei. "What should we do for training?" "What?" "Training? Obviously, I won't be letting you do nothing to improve upon yourself while being in the supernatural world, especially when you're in my peerage." "How will we train?" Sirzechs grabs Issei and teleports right into a large flat surface with nothing but dirt covering the entire area. Turning around, Issei was met with a large castle filled to the brim with crimson tiles on the roof, fully refined marble walls to add prestige to the mansion, and a beautiful garden that was seen far to right side of the mansion. The size of the mansion was easily dozens of times larger than even Issei's high school. Ready to fight? Ignoring Sirzechs' comment, Issei continued staring at the mansion with his jaw dropped. Pouting at being ignored, Sirzechs walked to Issei and closed his mouth with her hands. "I said ready? You know you look wonderful today. Flattery will get you nowhere. Not unless if it's making you blush." Sirzechs blushed even harder after that comment and simply smacked Issei, holding back greatly but sending him flying. Your goal is to endure swinging at me for an hour. Oh, that's it. Sirzechs smirked. Obviously, you don't even know how to fight, neither can you even tickle me. I'm far too powerful for you, and knowing how you are with your comments, you might make me embarrass myself, causing me to hurt you severely. The way you put it, you make it sound like I'm your kryptonite. Chuckling before flicking her finger and forcefully dragging Issei in the air towards her. Begin. Issei rushed towards her, and it didn't end that well for the boy. After an entire hour, Issei was seen on the ground gasping for breath while Sirzechs was using her phone. Damn it, how do people continue playing this game? I'm Town Hall 14 and it takes forever to level up. Have you been playing that game the entire time? Oh, you're done? I didn't notice. Issei frowned. What a way to let someone down. I need a way for you to grow in your endurance because let's be honest, you look like someone who hasn't ran at all in your life. Ouch, chill with the insults. Sirzechs continued, I need to make sure you have a strong base before you even begin learning what potential you have. Seems fair, Issei groaned in exhaustion as he continued to lay on the ground. After this, we have to make sure we get cleaned before Grafia sees us. She'll give us a full lecture. Sirzechs watched as Issei continued ignoring her. He continued staring into the sky, watching the reddish atmosphere. It was far different than the human world's atmosphere. Issei, get up! Grabbing him and lifting him up, Issei snapped out of his dilemma and looked at the woman. What? Stop ignoring me. I'm not ignoring you. Yes, you are. You talking just makes my body open both ears. One receives the information while the other spews it back out. Squinting her eyes, Sirzechs simply dropped Issei and walked away. I can't with you. Hey, didn't I say you look great today? Sirzechs snapped her head back at Issei and screamed, flattery will get you nowhere. But I wasn't flattering you, I was being genuine. Sirzechs blushed before continuing on her way. I swear you're a whole troublesome child to deal with. Says the one who goes over 100 on a 25 zone. Didn't I say it was for enjoyment? I didn't get us in an accident, Sirzechs defended. Issei stared at her blankly before snorting, you nearly caused me to have a heart attack. Not an accident. Screw you, next time I'll be driving. Sirzechs looked at Issei and began thinking, do you even know how to drive? Better to now know than to have you drive. The only reason we haven't crashed most of the time is because of your ability to use magic to maneuver the car out of the way, Issei remarked, causing for Sirzechs to glare back at him. I'll have you know I only use magic twice with you. We both know that's a load of bullshit, Issei retorted before walking with Sirzechs back to her home. I have a feeling that you're going to make my training session a whole lot worse. Smiling gently, Sirzechs simply replied with, of course I won't, I'll just gently toss you around. Issei didn't like that smile. There's no way that after him insulting her that she was smiling like that, meaning that he was going to die next session. Maybe he should write his last wills before going into that session. Before anything could happen, his stomach began growling. Sirzechs looked at Issei and joyfully spoke, oh, is someone a little hungry? Since Grafia isn't home today, I'll be the one dealing with the cooking. Issei, do not fear, for I am here. Issei could go for some food, and maybe Sirzechs would be an excellent cooker. Maybe this would be the best food of his life. Staying positive, Issei had very high expectations for the food. Is this food? My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. Issei soullessly stared into the distant wall. This can't be called food, it's actually terrible and tastes like garbage. Sirzechs came right in front of him and sternly spoke, too bad, because this is all the food you're getting. If you even think about going through my kitchen, I will beat you with this spatula in my hand. At the moment she said that, the said tool in her hand vividly shined in Issei's sight. Knowing how she is, Issei didn't doubt that she would do it, but maybe getting the chance to get some decent food outweighed getting beaten by that spatula. Waiting for the redhead to walk away with a huff, Issei quickly placed the food on the table and turned his head to find the trash can. Objective 1 found. Seeing it in the distance, Issei waited for Sirzechs to walk away. Seriously, youngsters these days just need to learn being grateful is all you need to be. With that, Sirzechs walked out of the room, leaving Issei in his thoughts about his plan. He did this once with his mother, and he thinks doing this with Sirzechs would be easier. Rushing to the trash can and placing the food. No, the garbage into the can and placing the plate with some crumbs in it. Sirzechs decided that making rice that is the color black and crunchy was a good idea rather than making it edible on the table and walking away towards the cabinet. Issei was in thought once again. If I was a wild Sirzechs, where would I put my nighttime snacks? Issei looked towards the closest cabinet. Sirzechs' kitchen was massive to the point that it was easily larger than Issei's entire first floor of his parents' home. It must have been a quarter of the size of a football field. The fridge was one of those excessively large ones found on television belonging to celebrities that cooked professionally. Where was it placed? Right in the dead center of the kitchen, because it can be opened from all sides. The problem with the fridge is that it was filled with food that needed to be cooked, and Issei wasn't the very best at cooking. To be honest, without instructions and someone to be with him, he would just blow up the kitchen. Now, the entrance was at the right, and the other three sides were filled with cabinets and countertops. Using his fingers, Issei began viciously opening each cabinet to find food. Luckily for him, on his third try, Issei found a bag of chips. Tilde mission successful tilde. There was no Sirzechs to be seen, and Issei could run away quietly. Crouching and quietly making his way out of the kitchen, Issei heard quick footprints coming towards him and couldn't take the chances. Luckily, the living room was right next to the kitchen, but the problem was that the living room was absolutely massive. Someone could place a Mario Kart track in here and still have room to explore some more. Sonic would have a field day with rolling around in this room. How was it filled? With couches and random decorations to fill the sides and middle, but leaving the area between the middle and walls very empty. Taking his chances, Issei dove straight towards a couch and landed with a thud. I should still check on Issei. I wonder if he did consume his rice. Health should come first before snacks. Hearing her approaching him from his right, Issei knew he needed to hide from her. Crawling quietly to the side of the couch and lying straight to potentially blend in with the marble surface, Issei's breath hitched when seeing Sirzechs walking right by him. He couldn't let this happen. He needed to stay silent. Not even touching his chips to not cause any sounds from the plastic bag, Issei watched as the big bad aimlessly walked past him and into the kitchen. This was his chance. The moment Sirzechs walked into the kitchen, Issei made a mad dash straight to the hallway on the other side of the hallway. Yes, he was so close. That was when he heard Issei, "Oh my, he did finish his food. I wonder where he is. Maybe I should reward him with something special." Taking the bag of chips and chucking them out of the room with his enhanced devil strength, Issei knew that he couldn't escape Sirzechs' clutches the moment that he would be caught. Sirzechs walked out of the kitchen and saw him. That was when he saw Sirzechs appearing right behind him. "Issei, what are you doing running away?" A yelp escaped his mouth before he quickly composed himself. "Oh, nothing, I was just walking to one of the bedrooms." "Oh, are you tried? What do you think? You tortured me with your so-called training for an hour. I just want to take a nap." Sirzechs noticed his tried expression and understood maybe she was a little tough on him. Nodding and understanding him, Sirzechs simply smiled before letting him walk away. "Just make sure that you aren't exhausted for our next session. I don't want you to be double sore the day after because I still need my bestie." Nodding his head and hurriedly walking out of the room, Issei internally squealed knowing that it worked. Grabbing the bag of chips and running straight towards one of the bedrooms, Issei could finally eat something good. He needed to have Grafia cook next time, or at least have her teach him so he could cook. He really missed his mother's cooking. Yes, bust opening the door to one of the rooms and seeing how it was identical in size to Sirzechs, just without any decorations or expensive luxurious items within, Issei smiled before leaping into the bed. Eating time. Meanwhile, Sirzechs was a little skeptical with how Issei was able to eat her food. Grafia tried her forbidden black rice and scolded her non-stop for a week for how bad it was. Scratching the top of her head, Sirzechs decided to clean up the crumbs on Issei's plate. Grabbing it and approaching the trash can, Sirzechs opened it and screamed in horror. Every bit of the rice was in the trash can. Burning with anger, Sirzechs screamed, "Issei!" Running straight towards where she could find him, moving so fast that she was checking nearly all rooms within milliseconds, she found him face up eating chips on the bed. "Issei!" Startling the brunette, Issei widened his eyes upon seeing the fiercely angered crimson-haired woman right in front of him with her fists balled and ready to rip him apart. "Aw shit, here we go again." Closing his eyes and expecting to be punished, Issei simply got a pat on the head. "I can't even be angry at you. Grafia couldn't eat it and I expected for you to eat my food. Let's just eat snacks together. We can't cook together, so might as well eat snacks together." Approaching him and looking at the bag of chips with interest, Sirzech's tone changed to a softer and kinder tone. Gimme gimme, licking her lips and having a dangerous pose, having both hands in front of her while she slowly approached Issei. Sirzechs leapt towards Issei on the bed in attempts to grab some chips. Sighing to himself, Issei offered one piece of chip to her and turned away. Mine. Sirzechs paused midway in the air and looked confused. Was that all that he was going to give her? Sirzechs pouted before pouncing on him. Gimme. No. Yes, and that is when the Great Chip War began. Boosted what? After having to tame the beast, Issei was sleeping peacefully through the night. Having to kick Sirzechs out of the room by guilt tripping her into walking out, Issei could finally have that alone time that he wanted. He didn't mind speaking with Sirzechs, but everyone needs a little bit of alone time here and there. In his dream, Issei was floating in the middle of a small pool with random strangers in the distance portrayed as shadow figures. Issei continued sipping his apple juice box while having some sunglasses on. This is the life. No responsibilities, no nagging, no training sessions, and unlimited amount of food. He just needed to think of something and that thing would come true. This is my host, Issei heard a very deep voice. Hold up, I wasn't dreaming about that. Before he could say anything, Issei was quickly sucked into a small whirlpool that formed in the middle of the pool. What the fuck? It felt as if he was flushed because the moment he went down the drain, he woke up in the middle of a white void. In front of him was a very tall and intimidating dragon. Speaking of which, why was the dragon covered in flames? I wasn't expecting for my host to be close to such a powerful being. Ddraig chuckled to himself while going through Issei's recent memories. Not only that, but you seem to have her care for you very deeply. Who are you? Ddraig stopped himself from saying something before squinting his eyes. Did Sirzechs not tell you about me? No, not really. She just told me that there were devils, angels, and the darker angels. Ddraig sighed to himself. I'm guessing she was too excited to train you. It appeared as if she was a little too forward with trying to train you. Anyways, my name is Ddraig, one of the 2 heavenly dragons that had fought the very 3 factions that mentioned during the Great War. Really, you fought Sirzechs? What? No, Sirzechs wasn't around when I was alive. I had to fight God and Lucifer in person. Issei's mouth dropped upon hearing that. You must be really strong. Are you stronger than Sirzechs? I haven't really seen much from her, but I don't really know. Let's just say that you are far below both of us, so it doesn't matter who's stronger. Ignoring the fact that he was called weak, Issei continued asking, what's your ability? I'm guessing as a dragon you're more barbaric and raw in fights. You're not wrong. I tend to just beat my opponent with my fire breath, and if they survive, I beat them brutally with my hands. So what do we do now? I mean, we're literally in the middle of nowhere. Issei pointed to the white void that surrounded them. Ddraig pointed to Issei. This is the mindscape of the boosted gear. Snapping his finger, a red gauntlet appeared right on Issei's right arm. Releasing a yelp from the sudden appearance of the gauntlet, Issei's eyes sparkled with amazement in seeing it. The emerald gem glowing with the small little crimson aura surrounding his right arm was amazing. Boost. In seconds, Issei felt much more powerful. His body got more tense, but he felt unbelievable. I have a power. Ddraig smirked before nodding. I would have made you bring it out yourself, but I really didn't want to go through that process. Rather than letting you learn on your own and have a chance to die without seeing your potential, I just forcefully awakened the gear itself. Pumping his fist into the air, Issei screamed in happiness. Hell yes, I can be like Gyoku. Now before you wake up, I should explain what your power is. It's a sacred gear named the Boosted Gear, and it allows for you to double your physical attributes used in battle. Each time you hear boosted, it will explode your power to heights you have never felt before. However, in doing so, you will feel immense stress onto your body, and if you reach your limit, you will lose control and all your power will dissipate, leaving you defenseless. Ddraig noticed that Issei began fading away. It appears as if you're waking up. I suggest speaking with Sirzechs about this. She will be your teacher from now on. Seeing himself fade, Issei looked at Ddraig one last time. Will I see you again? Of course, we are partners. I am the very soul that resides and allows for the boosted gear to run on its power. The moment you wake up, I have a surprise for you. Nodding his head and disappearing, Ddraig stood in silence, thinking over what he thought of his host. This is definitely the weakest host that I have, but I have a feeling that Sirzechs will turn him around. If her entire peerage is filled with giants, I'm sure that Issei Hyoudou will turn into a behemoth as well. Meanwhile, with Issei opening his eyes and staring at the ceiling before getting up instantly to think over what happened, the boy looked down at his right arm to see the red gauntlet still there. It wasn't a dream. I can become like Goku. Will you quiet down? Hearing Deidrag's voice coming from the gauntlet, Issei widened his mouth before speaking. Deidrag, you weren't joking. So, will you be guiding me to become better at using the gear? Yes, but first, I think you should speak with Sirzechs about this. I need to speak with her about how to train you. I can't really physically train you since my body doesn't exist, but I can make sure your mind is at its peak at all times. Sirzechs, I don't want to train with her. She's going to kick my ass inside out. Issei groaned, knowing what was going to happen to him. Deidrag laughed before poking fun at his host. What? Afraid of getting your ass beat? Can't believe the newest Red Dragon Emperor is afraid of a little spare. Shut up, you know what? I'll prove you wrong. I'll beat Sirzechs one way or another today. That's the spirit. We will beat her ass. He got a blow. Boom. And there he goes again. Grafia was on the side watching the fight between Sirzechs and Issei. Was it entertaining to her? Hell no, she was watching a one-sided beatdown where Sirzechs kept humiliating him in ways she finds hilarious. Oops, my ass hit you. Sirzechs dusted off the dust from Issei skidding across the little arena. The dust cloud following Issei's trajectory were huge, as when they were clear, Issei was seen in the ground, face planted with a mouth full of dirt. Deidrag, I hate this. Partner, I know, getting your ass beat is just the beginning, trust, it's always the hardest to begin. Not this motivation crap. What else were you expecting from me? Hell yeah, keep getting your ass beat, partner, keep on getting cooked. Sighing before realizing that he was lifted up in the air, Issei groaned. 1 point for Sirzechs. Not even trying to refute, Issei simply landed on his back and decided to stay down. I hate you. Suck a sore loser, Sirzechs stuck her tongue out playfully. Issei groaned before trying to get up. I think you overdone it this time. Shrugging her shoulders, Sirzechs said, I can't really tell when I do. I keep messing up how much power I need to hold back because how weak you are. Feeling a blow to his heart from the words that Sirzechs said, Issei dramatically clenched his heart, causing Sirzechs to laugh before lifting him up. You know, at this point, I can be your mother too. I take care of you, feed you, and tuck you into bed. Issei shook his head. You beat the shit out of me. Grafia feeds me since she is the one cooking, and you don't tuck me in since you simply throw me into the bed. Sirzechs pouted before letting go of Issei to drop onto the ground. Issei groaned in pain while staying down there before finally deciding to get up. Ready for the last round for today? No. Too bad you aren't getting a choice in the matter. Sighing to himself for the 14th time today, Issei got into position before boosting. Rushing at Sirzechs, Issei began to slow down the closer he got to Sirzechs in anticipation of her first move. Noticing that she was leaving herself wide open with a smug grin on her face, Issei got close before boosting once more to truly add an extra edge into his power. With the sudden burst, he nearly caught Sirzechs off guard, but she nonetheless was able to easily spin against his kick that he tried to deliver and lightly pushed his shoulder down. The sudden force sent shocks throughout Issei's body and nearly knocked him out of his boosted state. Pushing against the floor he was thrown onto, Issei pushed back to gain distance from Sirzechs before boosting once more. He needed a surefire way of at least catching her off guard. Before he could do anything, Sirzechs was already behind him, simply drawing imaginary circles on his back. Jumping away in fright, Issei was met with nothing. She was toying with him again. In anger, Issei began powering up even further. With the boosted gear responding well with his emotions, he began to glow red with a few boosts in. Sirzechs, upon seeing this, was pretending that she was sitting in midair. Oh, fireworks. Issei, filled with determination, rushed at her once more with far more speed. Aiming to catch any weaknesses on her, he circled around her, observing if she was going to do anything. She was dozing off while watching him or letting her senses know where he was. Gritting his teeth again, he boosted and finally reached his limited before screaming, Grafia said you're a dumbass. Sirzechs' eyes widened before Issei took the opportunity to appear right in front of her before planting his fist right into her face and screamed, explosion. Putting all his energy into his hand and slamming her into the ground, Issei didn't stop there and pushed even further with placing his power all into one singular point after slamming her to create an explosion with such power that it covered the entire arena with smoke. Grafia watched with some amazement that Issei was able to land a blow onto Sirzechs. Knowing that Sirzechs was simply toying with him, Issei knew that saying random things at her would confuse her. Since she likes to process things, this allowed him to land a minor blow onto her. Not bad, little one. Grafia couldn't help but smile in pride upon seeing little Issei getting stronger. Sirzechs appeared behind the exhausted Issei, who was still in the same position with his hand planted into the ground with a pouty face. You nearly ruined my dress. I'm going to ruin a lot more than that dress, Issei screeched before trying to land another blow. However, being drained by using all his power in that one singular blow, Issei simply tripped and passed out. Catching him, Sirzechs lifted him up in her arms and sighed in relief. She didn't want to push Issei too hard to the point where it would cause lethal damage. Kissing his forehead lightly and being proud of him, Sirzechs only looked at the boy peacefully snoring in her arms with a very fond expression. You're going to go big one day, Issei. Walking with Issei towards Grafia, Dangerous decided to enter. I wouldn't mind fighting against you one day, Lucifer. Sirzechs raised her brow upon hearing the ancient dragon. Is that so? The stronger the better the fight. Not fun for me. Why's that? I hate having one-sided battles. Why, you little. Shut up and leave me and Issei in this peaceful moment before he becomes rebellious again. Dangerous was about to blow up before Sirzechs placed her hand on the gauntlet and forcefully made it disappear by applying some of her immense magic. Grafia, the silver-haired maid, turned to her best friend. I need you to tell me the truth. What? Did you actually call me an idiot? Grafia looked at her with a deadpan expression. Who told you that? Issei said it to me and it surprised me. Knowing you, it probably was the truth. She stopped herself there and smirked. Actually, I did call you a dumbass. A very huge dumbass. Such a dumbass that there must be a word that can describe you because dumbass is too light. Sirzechs felt offended before retorting, oh yeah, well I think you're stupid and pathetic. Doesn't change the fact you're a dumbass. I should have killed you during the war. Sirzechs placed Issei on the ground carefully and rushed at Grafia, who began running the other way. Get back here, you piece of shit. Grafia ran as fast as she could with Sirzechs chasing her at full speed. Sirzechs had called Issei into the throne room for a reason. Packing around in her throne room, Sirzechs was confused and worried if this was going to be a good idea. Making Issei meet him could cause the two to get in trouble and for Issei to get hurt. Is this really a good idea? Maybe having him meet Tannen would have been a better idea, but Grafia suggested doing this was the better thought. Before long, Issei busted the door down, still evidently exhausted from their earlier session of training, and turned his head towards Sirzechs and raised his fist. I am ready for my mission. Sirzechs looked at Issei, noticing the fact that he was still wearing his ripped-up shirt and noticed his bare skin. Issei didn't have abs, but just seeing his skin was enough for Sirzechs to faintly blush. Before anything could be said, a large man with orange hair walked a little ahead of Sirzechs and laughed. This is who you want me to train with. Standing in front of Issei was someone that was very widely known for being powerful in the underworld, especially when considering his origin. Partner, the power I am sensing from this being is through the roof. Hearing Dangerous praise the man, Issei began getting heavily cautious. How powerful? Sirzechs levels. Nowhere near that level, but it's closer to the level of Grafia. That territory of power is known as run away or get fucked. In seconds, Issei felt the sheer power that was being emanated from this man and began getting nauseous. He's just a child, what did you even see in him? In a second, Issei watched as Sirzechs slammed her knuckle into the man's head, nearly knocking the man out. Knock it off, Sirder. Hearing that name, Dangerous widened his eyes in recognition and screamed, that can't be. How do you have the legendary fire giant of the Norse pantheon, Sirder, in your peerage? Sirzechs were going to explain the true origin to them but decided against it since it wasn't her place to tell. She simply nodded before explaining, I decided that having two hot-headed loafs trained together. Let me introduce Issei, the ultimate rook, Sirder. Sirder puffed his chest out in pride while staring down at Issei, who looked amazed. So, what should we begin with training today? Issei tilted his head before saying, I haven't trained legs in a while. It was as if it was a telepathic message, but the two immediately locked their eyes and Issei started shaking before running out of the room. "Oh no you don't, we are training legs today." Surtur dashed behind him and began carrying Issei with him to the special gym that Sirzechs had in her palace. Sirzechs looked confused about how fast it happened. They were just strangers, yet they already had a plan to train. Issei wasn't that fast in training with me. She was jealous with how fast the two were working together. Grafia walked into the room with a smile while carrying a box of cookies. Where did Issei go? Sirzechs blinked at her before saying, "I sent him to train with Surtur." Placing the box down onto the table that was near her, Grafia clapped her hands together and cheerfully smiled. "I'm glad the two are becoming great friends. I'm going to deliver these to the two right now." Running out of the room and leaving Sirzechs to remain still processing everything that happened. It was only like 30 seconds and she was left alone. With Grafia, she ran down the hallway before reaching the special gym that they had some magic in it to increase the difficulty. This allowed gravity magic to occur, if need be, for magic of increasing the weight of certain equipment such as barbells and dumbbells to make it more difficult for mass monsters like Tannen to train. Opening the door with a smile, Grafia quickly lost the smile and began frowning. In the middle of the room was Surtur screaming at Issei, "Harder, push harder, that's nowhere close to enough." Issei had a barbell filled with a couple of plates and was forced to squat at a slow tempo. Gritting his teeth and releasing grunts of extreme pain, he could only push harder because Surtur wasn't alone encouraging him. "Partner, if you don't do 15 reps right the fuck now, you are worthless." Dangerous was also against him. That's right, getting close to Issei, the orange-haired monster simply whispered into his ear, "We're nowhere done yet. Right after this we will be doing Bulgarian split squats. After that, we will be doing leg extensions with a superset of sissy squats." Gulping in fear, Issei nodded before pushing himself even further for the next rep. Grafia screamed, "Surtur, what the hell are you doing?" An angry Grafia rushed into the room and tried to help Issei, but Surtur intervened before she could reach him. "Don't interrupt him training. You're going to kill him. No pain, no gain. This is ridiculous. You're treating him like he's a child." Grafia started to release her magic, beginning to drop the room's temperature to nearly freeze, but it began heating up once Surtur began counteracting her power with his. Releasing flames to increase the temperature, Surtur looked unamused. Grafia began having a cold look on her face, but instead of being afraid of women like in typical shonen, Surtur held his ground and glared back. "What? Sirzechs told me to train him, now let us be." Turning his head back to Issei, Surtur remembered something and said, "We also need to kill your hamstrings before combat training." Issei could only nearly collapse upon hearing this. "Isn't this?" Being interrupted, Issei looked at Surtur, who looked disappointed. "You're not human anymore. You're half devil, a good amount human, and with that sacred gear you're damn well a portion dragon. I am going to push you beyond the human limits, beyond the devil limits, and beyond that dragon limit. If you don't listen right now, I will bring Tannen." Grafia entered in. "Oh no you won't. Surtur, bring in the big guns. Bring Tannen here and tell him that he can train a boosted gear wielder." It was as if Surtur could imagine the cruel grin on Dangerous' face, because that is exactly what Surtur did. He sent the message to Tannen. Grafia had enough and released her full power, but was silenced with a single finger from Surtur. "Do you really think you can take me and Tannen down? Plus, we can easily persuade Sirzechs with saying that we are making Issei into a monster for her. Just know this is for the best." With that, Surtur tuned her existence out and began pushing Issei even further beyond in his training. Another 2 sets left. Remember, working out is upper body, training is lower body. You want those tiny legs to grow stronger, then you will need to push this training session to the max. "Yes, coach." Smiling faintly and hearing Issei listening to him, he watched as Issei pushed another rep and was done with a set. "Do it till your body aches, do it till you can't stand up straight, do it till you're sick of it, then do it some more." Tannen. It's been a week with Sirzechs packing in and out of her thoughts. They would always directly go to Issei in fear of her being reckless and sending him to train with Surtur II, the Berserk. She hadn't heard a single peep from Issei besides the complaint that she heard from Grafia. When she ran to the gym, it was too late since Issei and Surtur were gone. Not only that, but Issei was with Tannen and Surtur. However, she felt a little bit more at ease knowing that Tannen was with Issei. However, while Sirzechs was dealing with her doubts of her decision, Issei was on the ground beat and chuckling. Currently, Issei was talking with Tannen and Surtur, who was in his giant form to match Tannen in size. You know, sometimes I wonder maybe if I wasn't going to a co-ed school, then I wouldn't have so many enemies. Tannen could only chuckle since he knew of Issei's story from him mentioning it during the week that they were training together. Who knows, maybe it wasn't you who was the issue, but maybe the women that were the issue. I mean, if they knew of the hole being there, wouldn't it be common sense for them to close the hole up? How many times would you and your friends peep at them? It was basically an everyday thing. Surtur shook his head in amusement, and they didn't have the plan of taking some wooden planks and a few nails to close the hole up. Partner, didn't you also tell me that the entirety of the staff were women? So wouldn't it become more of an alert if things that you did would go around? I have a feeling that either the women enjoyed beating you or enjoyed being admired for their body. It doesn't feel right that they still have the hole. Gotta agree with D-Drake with this one. How about this? You go back to school next week, right? Issei nodded his head. Then check the hole again. If it's still not patched, then that just confirms that they know but don't care. Surtur decided to ask, why did Sirzechs revive you? Issei thought of a response before nodding to himself. So, we were basically best friends before I was murdered by a psychotic woman, and she revived me. Surtur and Tannen looked at each other before laughing out loud. Best friends? Come on, you both are basically always together. Are you sure you two aren't something more? Blushing in response, Issei shook his head. I swear we aren't. Plus, it would be dangerous for her to even think about dating me. She is the Lucifer while I am just a half-devil hybrid. I mean, you are also the boosted gear wielder. Is that supposed to be a high position in the supernatural world? Tannen looked shocked upon hearing that and asked, are you serious? D-Drake, didn't you tell him about the power of the boosted gear? I didn't tell him since I knew that he would be safe within Sirzechs' clutches. I was waiting for him to be a competent fighter before letting him know the dangers and the power behind the boosted gear and the prestigious title it has. I mean, we have us too, and you can always do something too, D-Drake. Might as well tell him about the power of the boosted gear. Surtur quickly looked at Issei and spoke, my boy, the power of the boosted gear isn't something to be taken lightly. It has the power to kill the very gods. The power to double your base power continuously with each boost is powerful. Issei was going to say something before noticing that Surtur said the word base. Wait, base? If my base form is stronger, then that would bring my boosted state to become stronger. Tannen nodded. Not only that, but if your base power is strong, then you will be able to boost your power even further than before. You would be able to handle more boosts in total. It was as if Issei was beginning to connect the dots. That's why you were training me so hard. The training in strength, speed, and endurance. It was all to prepare me for the power of the boosted gear. Swinging his right hand, Surtur could only smile in satisfaction. That's right, my boy. We only wanted to make sure you were ready for the power. Not only that, but we wanted to bring you closer to the power that we hold. Sirzechs would have been a great teacher if you were more magic-based, but you're more brute force and strength-based like a dragon or like me. Since we have been resting for a while, are you ready for some more training? Nodding, Issei stretched his body before getting ready. First mission of training, you will need to carry these milk cartons in this box all around that mountain until you reach the top. What? This will test your endurance. Placing the box on Issei's arm, Surtur watched as Issei nearly toppled over. What the hell, why are they so heavy? I decided to add in more magic to make them heavier. Can't make it too easy for you. Now hurry up and get your ass to running, we don't got all day. Nodding his head and beginning to run towards the mountain, this is going to be a terrible day for me. Surtur and Tannen watched as Issei began running. He's not coming back until tomorrow, wanna spar? Tannen shrugged his shoulders and nodded. Let's wait a little bit before sparring. I want to make sure Issei isn't in the crossfire for sure. He may be already decently strong, but he isn't anywhere near our power. Going back to Sirzechs, she was screaming on her bed while throwing the pillow across the room. Where the hell are you, Issei? She was going to blow a fuse if this continued. Grafia was sitting down drinking tea while watching Sirzechs throwing furniture around. You should calm down. Snapping her head in her direction, Sirzechs marched up to Grafia and grabbed her by the hand and lifted her up. Calm down? How the hell am I supposed to calm down when that idiot is out there with two brutes? Maybe you should have thought about not having him be trained by Surtur. Maybe I should rip you to pieces. I'd like to see you try. I will. Attempting to grab Grafia, the woman was able to dodge Sirzechs' attempt and dash away. Damn, maybe all that mass on your chest is slowing you down. Sirzechs growled, we have similar-sized chests. You're right, maybe use both sides of your brain before making a move. That's it. Sirzechs began spamming spheres of destructions at Grafia, who simply began dodging and weaving through all of the attacks with ease while drinking tea. She had dealt with a wild Sirzechs before many times. One easy way for her to beat her is by doing this. Throwing a small icicle at Sirzechs, Grafia rushed towards Sirzechs while the icicle that she threw got destroyed. Once in front of the mad woman, Grafia went for a quick uppercut but was met with, "Fuck you, Grafia!" Sirzechs slammed her hands on each side of Grafia's head and knocked her out. Pesky woman, doesn't she know not to bother me? Sirzechs couldn't help but look at the peaceful face Grafia had while snoozing away. Deciding that it was time to get at Grafia, she grabbed one of her marker with invisible ink and began doodling. She decided to search up goofy images to draw on Grafia through the internet and couldn't wait for Grafia to wake up and not know what happened. This will teach you not to fuck with me, Grafia. The boy's prank. Boost. With the final boost, Issei rushed at Tannen with his entire body filled to the brim with energy. After 2 weeks of training, he was fighting against the two titans. Slamming head straight into Tannen, Issei exploded with energy he never thought he had, causing a nuke to go off and annihilate the entire terrain that surrounded them. Even Surtur was whistling in amazement. Damn, 2 weeks of near-death training and the boy has turned into a man. The explosion that took place had blinded both titans, leaving a crater filled with melted rocks flowing through the surface. Tannen stood with a small scratch as he looked at Issei with some amusement. Not bad, you tickled me. Nope, he didn't scratch him as Tannen wiped the dust that was on his leg. At this point, you could give some high-class devils some hardship. It doesn't take much for a sacred gear user, especially the sacred gear at your caliber, to grow to a monstrous level. Combine that with us training you in your new physiology, you're bound to become a monster one day. Fuck, Issei screamed while holding his broken hand. Maybe doing that wasn't the brightest idea. It was the only way for you to even have the two to bat an eye at you. You're not helping D-Drake. Anyway, I have been receiving messages from Sirzechs for the past week about bringing you back to her. She has been missing her little Issei for a while now. However, I just don't want to. We still have a bunch of training to do. Tannen sighed, knowing that he was in trouble for not listening to his master. I am going to get an earful from Sirzechs. We both are, Surtur added in before laughing his ass off, and we don't give a rat ass about it. Issei, we're probably going to head out for a walk. Want to join? Sure, let's go. With that, the three began walking. Tannen transforms into a human form and Surtur going back to his humanoid form. You know what we should do? What? Surtur asked Tannen. We should prank Grafia. How? We should place some stink bugs in her room. With that, she will hate the smell of her room when she goes back in and will blame Sirzechs. You're evil, Issei exclaimed. Tannen continued, not only that, but we should add in some spiders in Sirzechs' room. Issei shook his head to that. She usually has me stay in her room to play board games or random shit. How about we do it her throne room? Surtur nodded. Not only do we add in spiders, but we should also add in something that Grafia usually carries. Issei had a thought. Surtur, remember that box that Grafia usually carries when she gives me cookies and other treats? Surtur nodded before widening his eyes. You're a genius, my boy. Tannen, Grafia has a small box that she carries. We should steal that box and place it in the throne room. Not only that, but we should add in some magical grenades that blow up and smoke up the entire room. D-Drake added, which the others nodded. Issei added in, we should also add in a punching glove that comes out when the box is open. Tannen chimed in, not only that, but we should also cover it in cake to mess with Sirzechs even further. We should also add some stuff to Grafia's prank. How about a hand that comes out and spanks her with pie? Upon hearing Issei's idea, Tannen, Surtur, and D-Drake remained silent before Tannen spoke. You know how expensive that suit is for her. Issei stayed silent before Tannen broke out into laughter. Hell yeah, now that is something that we need to do. Can't wait to see her stoic expression disappear when she gets the boot. Then, we can add in some flames on the pie to make sure it disintegrates into nothingness. We need to make sure that there is no way of getting her dress back. D-Drag added, to which the crowd agreed with smiles. Plan, fuck them up, initiate. They first bumped. Even D-Drag decided to force the gauntlet to appear and fist bumped the three, with Issei using his left hand. Not too long after, Issei and the boys had the entire plan set out, placing a box filled with stink bugs in Graphia's room with the box that opens to spank her right across from where the box is at. This was going to be evil. Tannen and Surtur had the entire plan set out. Since Issei had D-Drag conceal his entire presence, he would be able to watch the entire thing happen in front of him. Watching through the window in hopes of hearing Graphia scream, Issei heard the door open and stayed silent. The moment that he heard the door open, he heard a woman's voice. "Why does it smell terrible in here?" Graphia noticed the box and walked up to the box and opened it to see the stink bugs. However, when she opened the box, Issei clicked a button that he had on a switch he was carrying. When Graphia erased the bugs from existence with a frown on her face, the pie-covered plastic hand that was on fire sped to her. Spanking her right on her ass, she squeaked from the sudden contact and turned around to see the hand. She was now furious. However, she failed to notice that her entire dress was on fire, burning away the very fabric of her clothing. She screamed in rage, "Sirzechs!" Running out of the room with her clothing burning, she was going to beat the living shit out of Sirzechs. A similar scream could be heard on the other side of the building, with Sirzechs screaming Graphia. Once the two met, they started screaming at each other. "I will fucking kill you. I will strangle you like I would have done to your brother if given the chance. I will rip you to shreds and feed your heart to your mother." They continued pulling on each other's hair before stopping. "Wait, if you didn't do it, and I didn't do it, then who was the one who did this?" That was when their thoughts shifted. Before they could come to judgment, Issei entered the room. Eyeing Issei, they asked calmly, "Issei, it's a little bizarre that you showed up after we screamed." "Huh, I didn't even know that you both screamed. I was just dropped off by Tannen. I'm now hungry." Looking at each other, they knew what happened. Issei. "What?" Issei said. Sitting down with a frown on his face and with Sirzechs pinching his cheeks, Issei was pouting. He was angry but couldn't do anything. "Now have you learned your lesson?" Nodding his head, Issei remained quiet while Sirzechs and Graphia scolded him. Once they were finished, Sirzechs let go of Issei's cheek and lifted him up into the air. "I didn't even do anything." Grumbling under his breath, Sirzechs couldn't find this anything but adorable. He was still angry about getting scolded like a child, but he was also back talking like one. Before anything could be asked, Issei yawned and was very tired. Sirzechs decided that he would be staying in her room today since she needed someone to hug while sleeping. She, at the very least, had the decency to sleep with clothing with someone. "Issei, you'll be staying here for the night. I'm bored and I need someone to hug while I'm sleeping." "Why not have Graphia be your pillow?" "Because she hates being my pillow and also your warmer." Deadpan stare at Sirzechs. Issei could only sigh before nodding. "Fine, but don't get overly clingy." Time skip. And here was Issei in his situation. Currently, Issei was wrapped up like a bag by the blanket that Sirzechs had for him and Sirzechs clinging to him like a koala. This was bad. "What the hell do I do? I'm going to fucking die from sweating." He was very uncomfortable from how tight Sirzechs was hugging him. "Issei, no, leave, I want ice cream." And great, she was sleep talking with him being involved once more. Instead of fighting against the hug, Issei began patting her head and comforting her to maybe cause her to relax her grip. Upon feeling the pats, Sirzechs began loosening her grip and began having this feeling of relaxation. When she loosened her grip slightly, Issei took the advantage of this and tried to escape. This led to Sirzechs grabbing Issei's hand. Turning to her, Issei noticed that she wasn't sleeping the entire time. She was faking it so well. More head pats. Knowing that he wasn't going to beat her with this, he continued giving her head pats and watched her begin melting under his touch. What the hell was up with this woman and head pats? In seconds, Sirzechs began to tire herself out from the relaxation and hugging. This was the day in the life of Issei. Now here they were in the morning playing some two-player game. New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and Issei was speed running the entire game. Sirzechs was lagging behind in all the levels, and what did Issei do to help speed run and cause her to die tens of times? "Issei, stop running so fast." Sirzechs was on her last life before she would get her 20th continue. Issei smirked before traveling even faster. moving so fast that he was dragging Sirzechs along, causing for her to scream in frustration. "I demand thee to stop." Nah. With that, Issei ran past a hill, and since the hill had a gap in between it, once Sirzechs was dragged into it, Issei stopped to let her fall a little before moving on and causing her to get crushed between the screen and the wall. With that, Sirzechs slammed her controller onto the ground and leapt at him. "Wait." Stopping in midair, Sirzechs glared at him. "What?" "I just want to say one thing." "Spit it out already." "Get good, dumbass." That's it. Grabbing Issei and slamming him right onto the ground, she sat on top of his stomach while forcing him to struggle underneath her. "Now let's see how you play while you're struggling to breathe." Squirming underneath her, Issei smirked before continuing playing. Just because he was underneath her doesn't mean that he was going to be bad at the game. Sure, his mind was distracted by the fact that there was one of the hottest women that he knew right on top of him, but his focus for shitting on her on this game was far too much. "I will be number one." Sirzechs grabbed her controller and noticed that Issei collected enough lives to revive her. Now, since she was in a bubble, she noticed that Issei wasn't going for her bubble. "Hey Issei, I'm right here." Issei remained silent while moving ahead. "Pop my bubbles." He continued speed running until he saw the flagpole. "Hey, pop my bubble." Issei made a mad dash towards the flagpole. Rushing forwards and touching the flagpole, he beat the level while Sirzechs, who was Mario, was watching from her bubble. Once Blue Toad landed on the ground and did his victory dance, Issei sighed in satisfaction. "You were supposed to pop my bubble. And watch you die again? Nah, I'd rather not." They were at the desert world. The difficulty wasn't insane, but it wasn't first world difficulty where Sirzechs wasn't getting murdered every second. Now, since they moved onto the castle stage, Issei watched as Sirzechs began carefully moving faster to make sure that he wasn't going to cause her to die. She failed miserably because Issei was right at the point where he was phasing her out of the screen. In a desperate attempt, she grabbed him from underneath him and slammed him right into her chest and held him there with her magic to make sure that he won't be able to see the screen. "I am not dying again." With this, she began playing at her own pace. Carefully making each maneuver, Sirzechs finally reached where Issei was at before passing him. How does it feel to be looked down upon by a noob?" Issei was just blushing from the place where Sirzechs held him. She didn't notice since she was super invested into the game and was desperately trying to detain Issei, but this was the closest he has been to a woman. Issei was someone that was very shy when it came to women because he has only seen women in 2D with chests this big, but this is 3D. His brain was very confused and embarrassed at the same time. He remained silent while trying to understand what the hell was happening. Sooner or later, Sirzechs hit some spikes and died. "No." Sighing in defeat, she looked down to seeing Issei this close and started to get embarrassed when seeing how close he was. Realizing what she was doing, she let go of him and gave him some space. "Sorry," she muttered before looking away. "It's all right." That's all Issei could say as he turned back to the screen. "I died." Sirzechs noticed that she finally got her 20th continue and looked down in disappointment. Seeing how it was silent, Issei did what his mother taught him when talking to girls: compliment them. "Your chest is very soft," giving her a thumbs up to make her happy. Issei was met with Sirzechs blushing to camouflage with her hair before covering her face. She muttered a jumble of words that seemed incoherent before jumping on her bed to hide herself. "Welp, I guess it's time to let me solo him." With his mind back to gamer mode, Issei and Blue Toad were going to crush it. Issei is glad. I had Issei on my chest and felt my heart beating. "Didn't I tell you to wait a year before he becomes legal?" Rias screamed at Sirzechs. "That's not the point. I felt my heart beating. And I told you to wait a year. You don't get it." "Yes, I do. He's supposed to be my bestest of friends, not someone that makes my heart beat like crazy." Rias sighed. "Sirzechs, we both know that Issei is not only your best friend, your supportive buddy, but also someone that you care for deeply. Him causing for your heart to beat this wildly means one thing." "No, don't tell me." "It's a hunch, but maybe there's a chance that you only had your heart beating that madly because you were embarrassed. A Sirzechs that's red is someone who's easy to mess with." Being reminded of her color when she's embarrassed caused her to get embarrassed again. Lightly pounding on Rias' chest, the latter could only chuckle. "Do you think it's about time to tell Issei what's happening with your sister?" Sirzechs slowly began frowning from hearing about her sister's arranged marriage once more. Why would he need to know about her arranged marriage? Think about it this way, you and I have seen the fight between Rias' peerage and Riser's peerage during the raiding, but the fight was close. Rias was able to train during the 10 days given to her, but she still ultimately lost during the fight. However, you could still use Issei to fight for Rias' freedom. Grafia began explaining her plan. However, this caused the Sirzechs to frown and stopped Grafia right there. No, I will not be using Issei and take advantage of him. There is no way in hell that I will be using Issei as a way of escaping the consequences of my parents' actions. But think about it, we both want Rias out of that damn arranged marriage, and seeing Issei's power right now, he would easily be able to deal with Riser. He's a dragon that can deal with those flames. Shaking her head, Sirzechs walked away with some disappointment when seeing Grafia come up with this plan. I'm sorry, but I will not use Issei's trust against him. I will figure out a different way of getting her out of her marriage. Grafia remained silent with a slight somber expression. Once Sirzechs was out of her room, Grafia began thinking to herself, this was the only way. Sirzechs doesn't see the fact that she doesn't have much time. Her sister's wedding is in 1 week and she doesn't have anyone that can fight against Riser. She is ultimately going to marry him without a choice in the matter or an escape method. Grafia didn't like using Issei either, but the thing was that Issei was more than powerful enough to deal with Riser, and she could easily deal with bringing him into the matter by saying that he was someone that was an outsider to fight against Riser. Grafia only needed to hurt Riser's pride before he would crumble and lash out against anyone, even the Lucifer herself. Grafia needed to explain this to Issei. Maybe they could get Rias out of this shithole that she has been placed in. Walking in the middle of the hallway, Issei noticed Sirzechs' figure not too far in front of him and waved at her. Sirzechs. The woman turned to him and lightly smiled. Hey Issei. Whatcha doing? I'm just going back to paperwork. Wanna watch a movie during the night? I heard that it's scary and very comedic. Sirzechs' eyes shined slightly before turning back to being somber. I would love to, but I have more work to do. I'll talk with you in a little bit. In truth, being reminded of her sister's situation was something that she hated. Luckily, she had Issei to deal with, who was able to keep her mind preoccupied, but even when reminded of Rias' arranged marriage, her entire mood soured. She needed to deal with these arranged marriages once and for all, because there would be no one to stop her once she had all the Satans on her side. Issei watched as Sirzechs walked away, leaving him confused. Sirzechs would never decline watching a movie, especially if it was comedic or scary, and this movie was both. Blinking a couple of times, he moved on and continued walking until he reached the gym. Once opening the door, he met with Surtur and Tannen, both waiting for him. Get your ass on that bench and we repping that shit out. Nodding to Surtur, Issei took off his shirt and started to bench with the gym bros. Once he was done, Tannen would load up the barbell with a huge number of magical plates to make the weight immense. Once getting underneath, he began repping that shit out. Surtur was next and he did the exact same weight. They continued working together until the very end, where Issei could be seen exhausted. You both don't fuck around with training. Of course they don't, they aren't soft like you. Nice encouraging words, partner. The three would chuckle at Issei's dilemma. Issei, wanna join us on going to an arcade place in the underworld? We both are bored and have some free time. Sure, I haven't been to one in years. With that, the boys headed out to enjoy the night. Fuck, how do I beat the monkey? Issei screamed while holding the joystick in his hand and twisting it and turning it as fast as he could. I have never seen a game move this fast. Tannen chuckled in seeing Issei trying to keep up with the blocks coming down in weird shapes. He needed to reach a certain score to move on to the next level. It's Tetris, but for supernatural beings. Of course not, these are enhanced to deal with supernatural beings' reaction speed. At level 4 you won't be able to handle it. The person who scored the highest in this game was our master Sirzechs. Really? Surtur laughed before grabbing the stick from Issei's grip and began beating the level with ease. If you thought the games in your world were unfair, wait until I show you a couple from hell. Beating the level with ease, he gave the stick back to Issei. I was fortunate enough to score in the top 10 on this game. Same with Tannen over there. Ajuka and Sirzechs are just monsters. They gap our scores by 5 levels alone. One day we will reach that level. One day I will be on this leaderboard. Tannen nudged Issei's shoulder playfully, and we will make sure to overcome you and kick you off the list. Issei pouted before turning his head to a different game. Is that poker? No, it's Joker, same game but different mechanics. Guess who's the best at playing this game? Sirzechs. Tannen shook his head. Surtur laughed before statting, that imbecile wouldn't be able to come up with a strategy to these games even if she was given prep time from the way you said how bad she was at playing Mario Bros. No, the best player was rumored to be the Legend 27. Who? The Legend 27 has never shown their face to the public. It is rumored that they show up and beat everyone and get their money and spend it all on beer. I heard that the Legend 27 eats rocks for breakfast and shits out diamonds. Tannen added, I heard that the Legend 27's sweat is the reason for why the Earth has an ocean. Surtur decided to add in another claim, I heard that the Legend 27 had a stalemate with Chuck Norris. Really? Issei was amazed to hear that. Surtur nodded with Tannen. One thing for sure is that the Legend 27 is someone that no one should mess with. The details. This is the last time I am going to do this. What the fuck is happening with Issei? Surtur pointed his finger at the hatchling who was currently floating in air. Break time, Issei continued floating while D-Drag was screaming at him. If you do this shit again, I will eat you from the inside out. I hate floating, just fucking fly. I didn't think you thought of me like that, eating me inside out. Sorry, I don't care if you're an immortal fire-breathing dragon, I don't swing that way. You know what I meant. With that, D-Drag began throwing himself around and shaking Issei's mindscape. Okay, stop, this was causing Issei to get a massive headache. No, I don't think I will. Fine, don't stop. If anyone asks us about us being the Red Dragon Emperor, then I will tell them that we should be named the Breast-Grabbing Emperor. D-Drag gasped as he heard that. There was no way that he was going to let this happen. Sitting down quietly, D-Drag remained docile. Tannen facepalmed while Surtur grinned with maliciousness. Wait, why is Surtur grinning? Surtur, he will make sure you're titled the Breast-Grabbing Emperor. Widening his eyes, Issei could hear his heart beating. D-Drag. Partner, they watched as Surtur began skipping away happily. Let's beat his ass. D-Drag amped Issei with his own power from within the boosted gear, and the youngster rushed at Surtur. Come back here, UNC. You'll never catch me alive. Surtur continued running as fast as he could. Move faster. D-Drag began powering Issei even further beyond. Now, while Surtur and Issei were running around like children, Grafia was sitting down on her couch thinking to herself about what her and Sirzechs conversed. There was no way that she was going to back down. She couldn't think about the thought of being married to someone who she doesn't love and consented in being with for her entire existence, especially when devils live far longer than humans to the point where they were reaching several millennia of age before dying. She couldn't even dream of letting her little sister-in-law live a life like that. She needed a way to save Rias, and her only hope was to bring Issei into the mix. Rias' entire peerage was not going to handle any members from Riser's peerage, let alone Riser himself. Issei was young to the supernatural world and could be the perfect way to fight against Riser if they were to hit Issei's ego. Once a high-class devil's pride was hurt, hell was to follow suit. However, Issei was the Red Dragon Emperor that was being trained by the strongest peerage of all time. She didn't want to use Issei, but she knew that Issei was someone that could fold Riser in half. He's part dragon, flames at the level of Riser's were just a warm shower for him. Grafia felt confident to the point where she knew that Riser would get demolished. Before she could think much further, she began hearing people running outside of her room. Being a maid, she got up and began investigating who was causing the ruckus within the Lucifer Palace. Opening the door, she was met with Issei and Surtur running around in circles. I'm going to beat your ass. You can't even catch me. Issei screamed and leapt towards Surtur, who simply stopped running, causing Issei to just miss Surtur and slammed his face right into Grafia's leg. Oh, getting up and turning around to glare at Surtur, come here. Before Issei could rush at Surtur, Grafia reached forward and wrapped her arms around him. Issei, being stopped from moving, looked confused. Good job, Surtur. Thank you for bringing Issei to me. Saved me the trouble for finding this problem child. Grafia lifted Issei in her arms and walked into her room before locking the door. Once inside the room, Issei looked at his surroundings and finally processed what was happening. He was basically kidnapped by Grafia. Issei, I needed to speak with you. It's urgent. Hearing the tone of Grafia's voice, Issei turned around and nodded. I know the reason for why Sirzechs is acting the way that she is. Oh boy, here comes the backstory. Dangerous spoke within Issei's mind, which Issei mentally rolled his eyes. I can literally hear your thoughts, dumbass. Fuck you, you old ancient lizard. Do what those ancient lizards are good for, being dead. Returning his attention back to Grafia, leaving the red lizard to continue having a tantrum within Issei's mindscape, Issei watched as Grafia locked the door. Fuck, I think some bad shit is about to happen to me right now. Grafia walked to her couch and patted the seat next to her for Issei. Once sitting down, the entire story was told to Issei, starting from the paper that reinforced the marriage between the two households and the continuous pressure that was built onto Rias to marry Riser. Finally, she began telling Issei the truth of why Sirzechs couldn't do anything, and why she felt so powerless and saddened seeing her little sister being brought this judgment. Let me get this straight, there is nothing that the most powerful devil that hell has ever seen in its history can do to save her little sister. Grafia nodded to Issei's claim, blowing his mind even further. How? She could literally lift her hand and erase majority of the beings in the world, from what Surtur and Tannen keep telling me about their master's power. Before Grafia could say anything, Dangerous intervened by forcefully summoning the boosted gear. Welcome to politics, Issei. The entire world tries to suppress Sirzechs' power to make sure that she is controlled. The only reason why Sirzechs doesn't act out is because she has seen that it would cause another war. Grafia sighed and moved the subject away from anything related to politics. Issei, I need your help. You can save Rias and save Sirzechs from her own hatred. How? You see, the many higher-ups have seen the rating game between Riser and Rias, and were disappointed with how long Rias lasted, especially when she nearly took down Riser's entire peerage alone. Her power nearly eradicated Riser's entire peerage, but was quickly subdued from Riser's resilience. You see, this was Rias' first rating game, and she was able to perform this well against someone who has gone almost undefeated for a while. We can use this against Riser, pushing for the agenda that the higher-ups were not pleased with the result. Issei began having his brain cells begin functioning, where he finally began catching onto why he was brought here. You want me to be there to fight him, and announcing that I am the Red Dragon Emperor to interest the higher-ups in agreeing to this fight. Smiling and hugging Issei, Grafia could only hope that this could work. Yes, I know that this might be manipulative, but you are the only way to erase this marriage from happening. We don't have much time to devise any other plan, especially when Sirzechs doesn't want to speak of this matter. She is submitted to reality. Sirzechs had saved my life before. This is the very least that I can do to repay the debt. Getting up, Grafia couldn't help but wrap her arms around Issei. Slamming his face right into her chest, she didn't care if this was appropriate or not. She was thoroughly excited with this. Finally, what felt like a roller coaster of disappointments and disasters, the nightmare that has haunted the Gremory family, was coming to an eventful end. Squirming in her hold, Issei was a blushing mess. This was the second time this was happening within 2 separate days. Was wild to him. This was too new and too fast for the boy, especially when the girl that was interested in him last time killed him. Now, a hatchling was going to fight the full-grown birdie. Let me solo him. The atmosphere was tense as Rias Gremory and Riser Phoenix were standing side by side. Rias Gremory was wearing a very beautifully decorated wedding gown as she looked down with her hands clenched into fists as she could only accept her fate. Turning her head to the side, she watched as her sister, the person that she admired and inspired to be, turned her head away from her and looked down in solemn. This was something that they dreamt of avoiding but couldn't find a solution to erasing. As she turned her head slightly, she saw her mother in tears in watching her daughter be sold off to a marriage that she didn't agree to. Venelana could only feel regret and sadness in knowing that she was part to blame for her daughter's prison. Riser was getting cheered by the crowd as if he had finally accomplished everything in life. He is one of the most beautiful women in the entire world of the supernatural as his soon-to-be wife. What else was there that could defeat this feeling? Oh, demolishing his soon-to-be wife's peerage and sending her hopes and prayers into the garbage where her peerage belonged. Riser turned his head to see his father and mother cheering him on while he was glowing in the spotlight. Sirzechs could only turn her head away from the display as she was beginning to sob. Grafia, standing right next to her best friend, started to hug her, pulling Sirzechs to her chest and began patting her on the back to soothe her pain. Seraphal could only frown in seeing her friend, hero of the underworld, in such pain. Do you, Riser Phoenix, accept Rias Gremory as your wife? Without any interruptions, Riser screamed, I do. Do you, Rias Gremory, accept Riser Phoenix as your husband? She knew that her choice didn't matter. Opening her mouth, she was going to say something before someone busted straight through the door. Fuck no. Issei busted through the door and looked at the entire crowd with his fist clenched. Riser, in outrage, sent his guards at Issei, Tannen and Surtur watched the scene with shocked expressions in seeing their pupil busting a wedding. The guards didn't last a single second as Issei placed a hand on the ground and blasted it. The sheer power behind the blast knocked the guards out within seconds. Now, walking towards the two, Rias was shocked in seeing Issei Hyoudou out of everyone, someone that was supposed dead from rumors in school, appear and destroying her wedding. However, the one who was most shocked was Sirzechs Lucifer, who was watching this entire thing with eyes filled with wonder and amazement. Taking a few steps forward, Sirzechs was so shocked that she couldn't form words. Grafia could only smile with pure happiness and love for Issei doing this. Turning her head to Ajuka, they nodded, and the plan could initiate. Ajuka, the most powerful devils right behind Sirzechs in power, walked up to the stage with a hint of confidence in seeing the plan that they produced last night finally becoming known. Well, this is quite a surprise in seeing this happen. Riser turned his head in anger before fear began to envelop his face. Quieting down and calming himself, Riser began to speak with the Beelzebub. "My lord, what is this? Did you plan for this? The higher-ups and the Satans have been thoroughly disappointed with the performance you brought with your match against Rias Gremory." Ajuka spoke while the rating itself began being holographically shown behind him. "You fought as if you were not fighting a threat, but your entire peerage was taken apart by Rias' singular attack. This is not the performance and attitude of the rating game killer that we expect, nor did we want. My lord, beg your pardon, but isn't it the result that matters? That may be true, but to keep your reputation, if not blast it further beyond and might bring you promotion, we had decided to bring in a new fighter that is new to the supernatural world." Pointing to Issei, who was walking up the stairs to the stage, Ajuka could only announce, "My people, I bring the newest Red Dragon Emperor." With his title being announced, Issei blasted his aura to cover the entire room. Issei, even with not much training from Surtur, Tannen, or Sirzechs, was already reaching high class in power. Just the knowledge that Sirzechs, Tannen, and Surtur had, and the way that Issei had asked Drake for a little bit of power to enhance himself more. The entire crowd gasped, even Riser himself. The title itself was easily able to bring fear into weaker beings in the supernatural world. Promotion, reputation, Riser began thinking about the benefits of what was being given. All you must do is defeat the Red Dragon Emperor. He is only a hatchling in power. If you defeat him, I will promote you and grant you a wish from Sirzechs and I. The reward was heavy. A wish from Sirzechs and Ajuka is already enough for anyone, but a promotion was a cherry on top. Riser really wanted to agree, but a fight with the Red Dragon Emperor was something not to be taken lightly. Hesitating, he felt as if this was a trap. Looking at Issei, Riser didn't notice anything about Issei that was special. His instincts were telling him to throw this away and just continue forth with the wedding. And if the Red Dragon Emperor wins, what will he be given? Riser knew that there was something else to be given. Someone in the crowd began screaming, giving rewards to someone that isn't even a high-class being. What in tarnation? Ajuka quickly silenced the crowd before they could go chaotic. Rewards will always be given to either fighter. Say, Dragon Emperor, what wish do you seek upon winning this battle? Cancel the wedding. Those words themselves shocked everyone. Rias herself was shocked even further as she didn't even know Issei much and he was already saving her from this eternal prison. Riser was going to disagree with the match immediately after hearing that. He was not going to let this take away his day. What do you say, birdie? Until he heard Issei call him a birdie. You dare call a phoenix a birdie? Burning with flames, Riser was angered. He hated being called anything but what he is worth. He is the golden child. He was a phoenix. It does not matter what this being was, no one gets to disrespect him and gets away with it. Sirzechs were watching this with hope. Watching Issei standing in the middle of the stage handling his ground in front of Riser was something that caused her face to warm up. Repeatedly, she had felt her heart beating when seeing Issei or how she would be with Issei, but this was something different. Was Grafia telling the truth? Watching Issei smile as if there was no fear was heartwarming and soothing. Why was Issei such an influence on her? He was her best friend, right? She couldn't stop. Blushing. Finally, taking a few steps, being right behind Ajuka, she called out, Issei, are you sure about this? Hearing his best friend speak, he turned around and gave her his signature smile. I'll be fine, just sit back and watch. At the end of the day, someone is walking out without their feathers. Sirzechs was hypnotized by his gentle and soft smile. This was the first time she had felt this. She was blushing like a schoolgirl. She was blushing just as much as she was blushing when she shoved Issei's face into her chest. Sirzechs quickly shook her head and regained her focus. This went unnoticed by nearly everyone besides Grafia, who simply smiled in seeing everything that she hoped to happen occur. Quickly, coughing into her hand and regaining the audience's attention, Sirzechs asked, "Both fighters ready?" Rias knew he needed preparations for this fight, but he could just equip his armor, ready. Issei already had a plan, ready. Why cry when you can die? Standing on opposite sides of the battlefield, Issei and Rias were ready to best each other. One will come out on top and will have their dreams come true, while the other will just go on living life. Begin. Rias rushed at Issei with flames covering his entire body, aiming to burn Issei to ashes. He will force the Dragon Emperor to give up his will to fight. Nice. However, there was one thing that Rias didn't expect from Issei. He was part dragon, and making a small deal with D-Drake, Issei was easily able to withstand the heat and the flames from Rias. Without Rias's flames being an issue, this was just a battle between who is the better fighter. There was one problem with that: Rias without his flames and having a power advantage over his opponent was basically a sitting duck. One thing the newer generation of raiding game kings is that they tend to stand back and let their pieces continue forth with pressuring the other team. Rias was born with immense magical powers that can burn away his opponents with ease, but when that is removed, he doesn't know how to fight much, let alone someone who is trained by the best peerage in the underworld. Dodging the fist flying at him, Issei let D-Drake scream, "Welsh Dragon Overbooster." He remembered the talk that he had with D-Drake. Sitting down within his room, Issei was contemplating the plan. He needed something to secure his win rather than using his power alone, and hoping that he could allow his dragon blood to withstand the heat and flames of Rias. Sensing his distress, D-Drake asked, "What's wrong, partner?" "D-Drake, what if my body can't withstand his flames?" D-Drake could tell that his partner was a little nervous about fighting against Rias. Even with the words of encouragement from Tannen, Surtur, and Grafia, Issei was still doubting himself. This was his first fight that he ever had that meant something. Through his fights with Surtur, Tannen, and Sirzechs, there was no real consequence besides Issei getting his ass whooped, but now there was actual problems. Seeing this, D-Drake offered something. "Partner, I do have a solution. If you offer me your arm, then I will be able to turn it into a dragon arm. I can make sure that you can achieve a glimpse of a power that the boosted gear has for 30 seconds. Usually the time would be shorter, but Issei was somewhat decently powerful, so even with sacrificing his arm for the overbooster form, Issei would have a decent amount of time to use the power." Hearing this, Issei thought about it. Changing his arm for a draconic arm was the solution. Not only that, but dragons naturally are stronger than devils, so would this cause for a greater increase in his power? "I'll sacrifice my 2 arms for this." Taken aback from his partner's claim, D-Drake could only burst into laughter. "Of course, but be ready because this will be painful." Standing right in front of Rias, Issei was covered from head to toe in crimson-scaled armor and was radiating pure dominance with his aura. Sirzechs, watching from the stand, was wide-eyed in seeing this. Issei didn't achieve the balance breaker state. She knew that from the name being called Overbooster and not balance breaker, but he still achieved this power nonetheless. He was really prepared for this fight. Sirzechs only held her hands together and brought them to her chest and began hoping that nothing bad would happen. "Partner, you only have 1 minute. Who am I kidding? Just beat his ass." Looking at Rias's terrified expression, the massacre began. Without even being able to react, Rias was slammed straight into the ground before Issei began pummeling him with punches. Blow after blow, Rias couldn't withstand the pressure and tried to erupt in flames to create some distance. However, Issei ate these flames for lunch. Slamming his fist straight into Rias, causing for the birdie to scream in pain from having his nose shatter, Issei wasn't done just yet. Lifting Rias by the head and watching him regenerate the pain instantly, Issei asked, "Let's try 1,000. Rias gasped in fear, but it was too late to do anything. Issei punched Rias into the ground and continued punching him. Blow after blow, Rias began spewing blood at an exponential rate. Even his regeneration was having a problem regenerating the broken limbs, open cuts, bruises, and blood spewing out of his body. The speed at which Issei was punching at Rias looked like a blur, but Issei began noticing something. Rias was beginning to regenerate slower and slower. Everyone watched the massacre with fear. Issei was beginning to reach the point where he would kill Rias even before Rias's body could realize he was dead. After the 1000th blow, Riser finally let out an ear-shattering scream followed by the cries of a broken phoenix. There wasn't much that a phoenix member of his level could take before succumbing to the mental pain of the blows. Each blow was breaking his body entirely while his body regenerated it instantly. Just because his body was fine on the outside doesn't mean he was doing good on the inside. Being kicked away from Issei, who stopped his onslaught in seeing what the hell happened. Upon seeing Riser having problems getting up and seeing his regeneration stopping, Issei stopped fighting altogether. He had won and he knew it. There was no need to kill him. Turning around, Issei said, "The fight is over." Riser could only cry in pain from the torture he went through. Cringing at what he did, Issei mentally asked, "Did I go too far?" Ravel Phoenix showed up and gave her brother a phoenix tear to help him recover, but Issei only watched as the two flew away. Riser's face was ripped to pieces, his body was torn to shreds, and his pride was shattered. In just 10 seconds, the proudest son of the Phoenix household was seen as a broken man. Issei could only look at Riser with sympathy. It was as if watching a man turn from brilliant and eyes full of joy to a broken shell. However, the worst part of it was that he was the cause. He never had gotten to this point. He broke a man. Continuously eyeing Riser, Issei sighed. Was there another way to this? The Red Dragon Emperor is the winner. The crowd started cheering, but Issei simply continued to be silent. He just wanted to rest now. Today was too much for him. "Partner, what you did is what had to have happened." Hearing his partner's words, Issei questioned them. "The Phoenix family is known for their power of instant regeneration. From what I have heard and from what I have witnessed from your fight, their regeneration is tied to their magical capabilities and their mental endurance. The more pain they feel, the more diminishing returns they will receive from the Phoenix regeneration. The only way for you to defeat Riser was to push him past his breaking point. What you did was the only way for you to win in your time crunch." Nodding his head, Issei simply will take his win and play some games when he gets back home. Speaking of which, he would love to visit his mother and father and let them know that he is alive. Smiling, Issei couldn't help but remember his mother's cooking. "I want cheesecake. Baby, why don't you meet me in the middle?" Sirzechs finally succumbed to reality. She had fallen for Issei. It wasn't much for her to realize her love for him. Just being with him for a few months and seeing how they both acted with each other was enough, but him stepping out of his bounds and saving her sister from suffering was the cherry on top. She broke through the stadium and broke through reality with her power alone to meet Issei in the raiding game dimension. No one said anything because, what could they do? Sirzechs was a force of nature so powerful that she could single-handedly take on the entire 3 factions in her humanoid destruction form alone. Watching Sirzechs flying towards Issei, Grafia finally had one of her goals completed. Now she could focus on other goals, such as making sure Sirzechs doesn't do anything bad to Issei until he's an adult. Issei, turning his head to Sirzechs, he was met with her slamming her body right into him and hugging him tightly. She made sure to not let him go. Once the ground broke and they were brought back to the real world, Sirzechs continued hugging and keeping him afloat within her arms. You're the best." The scene was wholesome, but the problem with Sirzechs hugging Issei was the general public watching the entire scene unfold. Sirzechs, quickly realizing her mistake when seeing the eyes watching them, teleported the two right back to her palace. Even someone on the caliber of being the Red Dragon Emperor was, in the face of the devils, unworthy of being even close to the Lucifer. "Well, I guess that happened." Surtur continued drinking away while Tannen just shrugged. "We just got a whole bunch of issues. Now that the supernatural world knows of Issei's existence and how close he is to Sirzechs, we have to make sure that he doesn't get in trouble of the level of killing him," Tannen said, which Surtur groaned. Sirzechs threw Issei onto the bed and leapt onto him. She knew that she needed to wait to do anything with him, but there was one thing that she could do before that. She could mark him as hers in some way. Wait, she already marked him as hers by giving him one of her pawn pieces. Sirzechs, whoa, she kissed him on the cheek and continued hugging him. "You saved my sister, I can't thank you enough." "No problem, just make sure to let me know if there are any other issues you are dealing with." Issei poked her forehead, and no more moody Sirzechs, only happy and joyful Sirzechs from now on. Sirzechs pouted before chuckling, "Fine, only because you said so." Finally, the over-booster form timer finally ran out and Issei slumped right into the bed's surface and let the comfortable relaxation begin to overcome him. Sirzechs finally noticed the draconic arms that Issei had since he finally ran out of energy. Sirzechs gasped in horror in seeing Issei with the draconic arms. "Issei, what? No, don't tell me." Sirzechs realized what happened. The increase in power and a form that was achieved could only have been through power being given to Issei from someone. Seeing the draconic arms, Sirzechs deduced it was from D-Drag or Tannin. D-Drag, you did not turn Issei's arm into dragon arms. Issei stayed silent, so did D-Drag. Sirzechs grabbed Issei's arm and looked worried. You sacrificed your human arm for these just to defeat Riser, Issei. Sirzechs was speechless before tears began blurring her vision. The one thing she told herself was to make sure that Issei was kept away from the brutality of the supernatural world until far later when he matured. However, she already failed since he began changing his arms into something else for more power. Issei hugged her to calm her down. There's no need to be worried, these arms look so cool, look at them, I can cosplay as a humanoid dragon. Trying to lighten the situation, Issei heard Sirzechs chuckle a little bit. As long as you're okay with it, I'll be fine with it, Sirzechs said before wrapping her arms around Issei again. Issei, I wanted to ask you something. Sirzechs was blushing heavily while Issei waited for her to ask. From the moment I met you to now, I began to have this feeling in my heart whenever I am near you. I kept pushing the thought away because it couldn't possibly be true. However, after seeing you save my sister, seeing you fight for what's right, seeing you fight for me, saving my life from suffering, I knew that it was true. My heart continued beating and my eyes couldn't keep themselves from you. Issei, I love you. Dropping the bomb onto him, Issei's mind began running on overtime, trying to keep himself from freaking out. This was a woman, absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, someone that he was super close to and someone that he would do anything for, was saying that she loved him. D-Drag grinned from hearing this and used his power to calm Issei down. Say yes, she has always been there for you, she has kept you safe from the supernatural world. Also, don't act like I don't know your thoughts whenever she holds you close to her. Issei blushed from hearing D-Drag and he calmed himself down. Was she being serious? Sirzechs, being in love with him, someone who was perverted beyond the concept of perversion, being loved by someone who was ruler and savior of an entire dimension. Before Issei could doubt himself more, D-Drag came into the rescue. Stop. Forget about whatever those women in school have said to you. Forget about what they have done to you. Forget about their shit. This moment is about what you think about Sirzechs. This moment is about how you feel about her and how you want to continue forth with the woman that saved your life. This is your best friend, partner, forget about anyone else. Think about this as a woman speaking with a man, not Lucifer and the Red Dragon Emperor. Seeing Issei remaining silent, Sirzechs expected the worst and began having tears going down her cheeks. This was the first time she had ever confessed to someone and was the first time she was going to be rejected. She couldn't hold the embarrassment and pain that she was feeling. However, Issei said something. You know, I always liked women older than me. Widening her eyes after processing what Issei said, Sirzechs smiled with her glossy eyes and leapt right into his arms. Thank you, thank you, thank you. D-Drag was also laughing in joy within the boosted gear while Issei, he couldn't help but continue grinning. He was tearing up as well, knowing that the one thing that he ever wanted in life was finally coming to him. He was finally loved and was finally not going to die alone. No, thank you, Issei softly said before being silenced with Sirzechs slamming his head right into her chest. Moving fast. Sirzechs was sitting down with Issei right next to her. She was beaming with joy knowing that her Issei was finally hers. She was so happy that the news of her sister's wedding being cancelled for good was only half as good as what she was experiencing with Issei. Grafia, what if we have Issei and I marry when he's 18? What? D-Drag, Grafia and Issei all screamed out when hearing Sirzechs. Sirzechs looked at the two in confusion. What was wrong with this? You can't do that, Grafia firmly stated before pointing to Issei. First of all, Issei here is too young for that, even when he's 18. That's too early for him. Sirzechs pouted, but he would be an adult. I don't see a problem. Grafia ignored her and continued. Didn't the marriage problem with Rias and Riser give you any hesitation from doing this? Yeah, but that was because the two didn't see eye for eye. Grabbing Issei by the head and placing her head against his, she started rubbing her cheek against his. She continued, I love him and he loves me. Grafia sighed and decided to leave this issue until Issei would turn 18. At the very least, make sure to keep clear of doing anything bad to him. Grafia knew that she was going to be needed to make sure that nothing bad would happen between the two, especially when Sirzechs was new to this entire thing about relationships. Grafia had a feeling that if Sirzechs felt she was being very pathetic within their relationship, she would go and take the next step just to prove her love. Diedrag was just bellowing in laughter. Partner, this is the most entertaining thing I have seen my host do, besides that one host who backflipped into the woman's bathroom. You gotta tell me more about him. No comment, Diedrag stayed silent afterward. Sirzechs was still adamant about marrying Issei right when he turns into an adult. We should tell my parents about this happening. Sirzechs smiled. I get to meet Mr. and Mrs. Issei. And with that, Issei was finally able to teleport away from the Lucifer Palace. Reason why he didn't do it before was because he was prevented from doing so since Sirzechs deemed that he was far too weak to even roam around alone. Since she was Lucifer, she was busy most of the day, besides her Issei time, and couldn't accompany him for long. Now with Issei being more powerful and the fact that she knew that he would wander off because of his curiosity, she thought it was the perfect time. Not only that, but she could bring Issei's parents to agree with marrying him early on. Appearing right in front of his house, Issei blinked a couple of times before staring right at his door. Sirzechs looked around to see his house being just as well built as she remembered. Nothing fancy, but nothing that was unbearable. She liked the house. From time and time again, when she would pick up Issei with her car, she would notice small details such as his house having uneven terrain and his driveway looking as if it was almost as old as her. Issei felt nervous confronting his mother and father. What did they think of what happened to him? Now, being faced with seeing his mother and father again, he felt terrible not letting them know that he was alive. Sirzechs squeezed his hands and Issei nodded. Walking up to the front door, Issei knocked on the door. When the door opened and it revealed his mother, she smiled with warmth that no one could ever give him. Hugging her son, she dug into his shirt. I was waiting for when you would be back. Wait, back? Did she know that he was alive? When I was told that you were attacked by some harlot, I was going to go out there and find that woman and kill her myself, but thankfully I heard she was dealt with. How did? His mother smiled with tears in her eyes. I was so happy when Sirzechs told me that you were safe. She said that she had to treat you from a bunch of injuries. Turning his head to Sirzechs, Issei was shocked. Throughout meeting with his mother, tears were crawling down his face. He was feeling terrible with letting his mother in the dark of not knowing that he was alive. Issei smiled at Sirzechs and said one word, thank you. Sirzechs nodded and left the mother and son alone. Walking into the house, she had already notified Issei's mother that he was alive. She knew from her own personal experience that her mother would have been panicking and crying her hearts out if anything would have happened to her. That's why she immediately told Issei's mother that he was alive and doing well and just needed to patch up his wounds. To impress his mother even further, Sirzechs told her that she was treating his wounds and that she was a professional doctor. When Sirzechs told me that she was a doctor and was handling your wounds, I was so glad. You didn't tell me that she was a young prodigy in the medical field. Mickey smiled while clapping her hands together. I'm so glad you have such good friends. She even told me her best friend was your best friend and that Grafia was her name. She told me that she was a doctor too. Is she here? Yes, I'm right here. Grafia barged into the house with elegance. Turning to seeing the mother and son together and Sirzechs wandering around, she sighed in relief that she was able to arrive before anything could happen. Mickey squealed and brought both Sirzechs and Grafia together to hug all three people at once. This calls for celebration. Issei wondered where his father was at. The sound of his mother's voice should have been loud enough for his father to hear. Where's Dad? Oh, your father is at work. With that, the four sat down at the table in the middle of the living room. Lady Hyoudou. Looking at Sirzechs, Mickey laughed. Oh, how kind, but dear, call me Mickey. If you're a friend of my son, then you're a friend of mine. Sirzechs nodded before continuing. Mickey, we have some important things to discuss. Mom, you want to marry my son when he turns into an adult? Mickey was summarizing what Sirzechs told her. Yes, he is the love of my life. Sirzechs remained serious while Grafia sighed, knowing that Mickey was going to reject this. Why didn't you say so? What? Grafia screamed when hearing the response. Mickey smiled with joy. Why would I say no? My son will be marrying someone who's a doctor and someone so responsible. Not only that, but my son always had a dream of marrying someone so beautiful. Sirzechs blushed when hearing the compliments she was receiving. Thank you. So when my son turns 18, you will marry him? Yes. Mickey squealed and grabbed Sirzechs' hand. Yes. Sirzechs and Mickey both began laughing and hugging before going in circles. I promise to be the best daughter-in-law. I believe you, thank you for saving my son and his lonely heart. Issei turned to Grafia and said, I got a wife that can destroy me. Any suggestions on surviving? Grafia sighed, you could just tickle her whenever she is mad. You can tell her that you know her secret baby pictures. Wouldn't she know that I'm lying? She's naive when it comes to you. Issei smiled before relaxing on the couch. Holy shit, I got a wife, I got a fucking wife, this feels too unreal. Sirzechs sat right next to Issei and cuddled her head right into his neck, and I got a husband. After so many centuries, I got someone who loves me. Oh my gosh, Mickey screamed, I need to take a picture of this. Grafia could only watch Sirzechs smile and laugh while being with Issei. Grafia herself couldn't help but smile with them. Seeing Sirzechs, someone that was alone for so long and only saw war when she grew up, become someone that is blushing and getting embarrassed like a schoolgirl, was something that was golden to Grafia. This was a moment that she would never forget. Grafia turned to Mickey before asking, how about we celebrate this with some dinner? Mickey nodded and ran to the kitchen. Grafia followed suit while Sirzechs and Issei continued conversing with each other about their future. If we have a child, I want their name to be Milikus if it's a boy and Makima if it's a girl. Whoa, maybe moving too fast there. Let's first wait until I graduate out of high school. But that's like in forever, Sirzechs pouted and started throwing a tantrum. Why can't time move faster? And I'm hopping for the exact opposite. I want to stay a child. I hate responsibilities. Too bad, you will have to be responsible for stealing my heart. Sirzechs placed both her hands on his shoulders and began shaking him. Do you like the names I mentioned? Yes, I do. Trying to keep himself together while being shaken around, Ddraig added to the fuel by laughing. Issei was barely able to concentrate on her words. Being shaken by the Lucifer was no easy task to endure. Perfect, Sirzechs calmed down and relaxed into the couch with Issei. Let's watch a TV show. Like what? Well, I used to watch romance shows and movies, but then I got jealous of them. Now, since I finally have you, I can watch them and throw shade at them. Issei hated those types of shows. That's when Issei noticed from the corner of his eyes of something special on the TV. Is that the newest Elden Ring game? Immediately, switching his attention to the television, Issei's eyes were glued to everything in the trailer. Sirzechs looked confused before getting jealous at the attention that Issei was giving to the TV. She tried to get in front of him, but Issei dived to the side to continue watching. The Firekeeper, Issei widened his eyes when saying that. There was no way that they were bringing things from the previous games to the current game. Sirzechs tried to blow his view by spreading her arms and getting in front of him. However, Issei ducked underneath and crawled between her legs and appeared right in front of the television. Nameless King, Issei screamed in excitement and slight fear. Sirzechs finally had enough and grabbed Issei by the head and threw him into the couch and turned the television off. That's it, no more TV, just the two of us talking. Issei was still dreaming about what he saw. Playing nearly all of the Souls games, Issei was in La La Land. Sirzechs lifted Issei up and began shaking him. Speak to me. While Sirzechs was manhandling Issei, Grafia and Mickey were making some food. What should we start with? Grafia thought about what they could make with the food that was in the fridge and in the cabinets. How about some mashed potatoes? Mickey nodded before thinking about something. Since we are celebrating, how about we make all of our favorite foods? I'll make cheesecake for Issei and I. I'll make some pudding for Sirzechs and I. Grafia liked the idea. A small little reward for going through hell emotionally, both her and Sirzechs. Then let's begin. Turning on chef mode, Mickey began cooking as fast as possible. Grafia was the one that was struggling to keep up. So this is the legendary cooking skills of a mother. Now I know what I need to surpass. Grafia, with fire in her eyes, began moving even faster, to go even further beyond. Within record times, they were already halfway done. I want to ask, how was Issei as a child? It was as if it was a nostalgia bomb for Mickey as she stopped moving and began remembering the memories that made her love Issei so much as her son. Issei was always someone that would make a mistake first before learning to never do the same thing twice. He was always so curious that he would always do something bad before realizing that he messed up. One time he threw a marker at a teacher just because he was curious about what would happen. Nonetheless, he learned what a spanking really meant. Grafia softly smiled when seeing the mother getting emotional. I love Issei more than anything in the world. He means so much to my husband and I. He was always innocent and was always trying to make new friends. He would smile all the time and listen to us when we would need him to. I remember one time when he was scared after watching a movie where a hand came out of toilet and didn't want to go into the bathroom because of it. If you don't mind me asking, does Issei have any siblings? It was as if a bullet went straight through Mickey's chest when hearing the question. No, Issei is an only child. I had a few miscarriages that could have been his siblings. Grafia knew that she pushed too far and immediately went to hug the woman. I always felt like a terrible mother, thinking that it was something wrong with me, that I somehow messed up. Seeing Issei watching other siblings always broke my heart. I wished Issei had a sibling so he always had someone around his age to rely on. Starting to get emotional, Mickey stayed silent. One thing I will say, you raised your son to being an amazing man, Grafia said gently to calm Mickey down. It makes me jealous that he's your son and not mine. Mickey chuckled slightly before wrapping her hands around Grafia. Thank you, Grafia. School. Since he was back and his mother knew that he was alive, he was forced to go to school again. His father showed up tired from his job but was glad to see his son healthy and doing well. Now Issei was in front of the school building and was breathing in to calm himself. He may have the power to defeat anyone at the school, but he was more of an introvert and didn't want to involve himself with people that he didn't know at all. Walking forwards, Issei was met with Rias' Gremory staring straight into his eyes and smiling widely. Running to Issei, she stopped right in front of him and grabbed his hand. I'm so happy to see you. You saved me from Riser and made my entire family happy. Not only that, but I heard about the news of my sister being with you. What, how? Did you really think she would keep it a secret from my mother? Not only that, but my mother told me afterward just to make sure that I can have teasing material against her. Rias puffed out her chest. She finally had things she can get back at her sister. Wait, if Sirzech's mother knows about me, does her father also know? Rias nodded and caused for Issei to go into a spiral. What would her father think of him? My father thinks of you as someone perfect for Sirzechs. It's not like my father or mother can do anything about your relationship with Sirzechs. She's the Lucifer, for crying out loud. She can literally kill a dozen of high-ranked devils and nothing would happen to her. Oh, that's nice. But Mom did say to make sure to keep an eye on you. She trusts you, but she wants to make sure that nothing bad happens with you as well, Rias mentioned before thinking about a way to do so. Luckily, I have Kiba in your class and I have control with Sona over this territory. We should be able to keep you safe. Wait, why do I need protection? Because my mother said that, seeing as though you're barely reaching the point where you're being recognized by the higher-ups, she said that you're still a child in the supernatural world. Hey, I'm not a child. You're a child, Rias declared. I'm almost an adult. You're 17. And what are you? I'm 18, I'm an adult, Rias barked at Issei. What else could Issei say? Well, you sure don't act like it. Look who's talking. Before anything could continue, Akino stepped in and silenced the two of them up with her hands. All right, let's relax, you two. Seeing as though they both had taken it a little further than needed, they both stayed silent and listened to Akino. Rias and Issei, let's discuss these things in the occult building rather than in the open. Realizing that they have been talking openly about some supernatural stuff in the general public, Rias and Issei got embarrassed and nodded. Walking with the two women, Issei continued noticing the many stares that he was getting. Issei was gone for such a while, yet here he was alive and well. The school wasn't going to be very happy with his arrival back. Once arriving at the occult building, Rias and Akino opened the door to reveal Kaneko and Kiba seated on the couch. Kaneko, when seeing Issei even after him saving her master, still got on guard knowing his reputation in the school. Kiba simply waved his hand at Issei. Hey, Issei. Waving his hand back, Issei walked into the building and started looking around. This place is ancient. Hey, I take offense to that, it's just unique in its own way. Rias pointed to all the decorations around. Was very boring. Rias growled before sitting down at her desk. All right, since you will be working with us since we are on the same side, how about you join our club so it doesn't look weird when you just walk into our building? Why would I do that? I want to join a different club. We have couches. The nurse has a bed. You can skip classes with this building, and it won't be considered a violation. Skip, like could I skip a test? Of course, I can always make an excuse powerful enough to rid an exam for the day. Rias smiled in triumph, knowing this was the final straw to bring Issei into her little club. She knew for sure that bringing him into her peerage was a no, plus she wouldn't do that without his permission. At least having him connected with her through the club was good enough, and that she could communicate with him about the situation around the town. Having more allies was always a plus, especially with someone with a novice peerage such as hers. Yes, Issei had a math exam tomorrow that he put on his calendar and forgot to study for. He was going to fail and needed a bailout card. His mother knew of the day of the exam since Issei mentioned it before this entire supernatural world happened to him, so she wouldn't allow him to go to Sirzechs and wanted him to study. This was his chance of skipping classes that were useless to him, such as music class or PE, especially when he was far more powerful and fit compared to a regular human. Perfect! Rias slammed her hands into the desk and noticed a teleportation circle appearing next to them. Appearing beside Rias was Sirzechs and Grafia. To others, the appearance of the great Lucifer and her queen was a sight to behold, and they immediately bowed in the presence of the Almighty. However, Issei was confused in how Sirzechs found him. Sirzechs smiled when seeing her sister, but when turning to see Issei, she looked confused before looking a little angry. Jealousy began bubbling inside her when seeing Issei hanging out with her sister rather than her. Why, Issei, I didn't expect to see you here speaking so comfortably with my sister. How long has this been happening? Issei replied instantaneously with 4 minutes. Big sis, why are you here? Rias screamed. I wanted to drop the news of Issei and I. Sirzechs immediately switched her attention to her little sister. I am going to marry him soon. And with that, Rias fainted. Rias calmed down. Rias woke up from a dream and looked around to see her sister and peerage surrounding her while she remained rested on the couch. Shooting straight up, Rias immediately had to know, Sister, I just had a nightmare. You said you were going to marry Issei. Sirzechs smiled and laughed when hearing Rias' distress. It was amusing to her seeing her sister being the one that was being worried for her, especially when she was marrying a low-class devil. Rias, however, misunderstood the smile and sighed in relief. Thank Satan that it was just a dream. I understand. You all can now laugh at me for such a ridiculous dream. Hearing no one laugh besides her sister and Grafia, who was chuckling into her hand, Rias widened her eyes and began suspecting the worst. No, it must have been the fact that her sister and her queen were both here and scaring them. However, that was when she noticed her sister stopping her laugh and smiling softly at her. No, this can't be. Don't tell her that this was going to happen. Sorry, Rias, but I'm planning on marrying Issei. And in seconds, Rias screamed and began panicking. But why? Are you against me marrying Issei? Sirzechs lost her smile. No, I trust that you will feel happy with Issei, but it's more about Issei. He's going to die if he gets touched by your attacks. The difference between you two is like comparing Great Red to me. I can train him to become powerful. But you're so powerful that you will attract attention from everyone. Rias was concerned not for the fact that Sirzechs was marrying Issei. She didn't care one bit for his reputation or any of that. Rias wanted to make sure that he would be safe with Sirzechs. You're a walking power magnet. Everyone knows everything about you. Sirzechs nodded but chuckled. You see, I have Issei placed in high protection. A few of my pieces are always guarding him at all times to make sure that he won't be in danger whenever he leaves my palace without me. Sirzechs patted her little sister on the head. Not only that, but I will be showing him to mother and father today. If you can keep him protected to where it won't hurt you both, then I'm happy as well. I should believe in you both more. You're the ruler of hell and he's the Red Dragon Emperor. That's so much better. Sirzechs got up and looked towards Grafia. You think that Issei's done with his English test. Just when she said his name, Issei bursted through the door and he didn't seem to be very happy. I think I barely passed that exam. Issei, Sirzechs leapt right into Issei, taking him to the ground with her. Landing with a thud, Issei started to caress her head. What's wrong? Nothing, I'm just glad to have you here again. Wait, you barely passed your exam. Grafia was the one that shut the two up with that. Did you not study at all for that exam? It's an English exam. I was thinking that since I have D-Drag that auto-translates everything, I could pass the exam with ease. Turns out, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I realized maybe I understood everything, but I sure as hell didn't know how to write properly. Issei scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Grafia shook her head in disappointment. Issei, don't ever become too confident before an exam. You're not like the ones that don't study and get perfect scores. Hey, who knows, maybe I could cook on one of these exams with ease. When's the last time you actually did well on an exam? Grafia countered. I got a 70 on my math exam. That isn't called doing well, that's called doing average. Actually, that's called doing below average. Grafia really needed to teach Issei how to study, but she also wasn't going to be around much when being with Sirzechs to represent Lucifer and her queen. Turning to Rias and Aquino, Grafia glared at the two. I have the perfect solution. I can teach Issei, Sirzechs exclaimed before being shot down with Grafia's glare. If I have you two studying, I have a feeling illegal things will begin happening. Grafia walked up to Rias and Aquino and looked at the two, signaling that there was no room for discussion. You two will be helping Issei here studying. If I hear that he doesn't do well on an exam, then I will be coming after your head. Understood? Rias and Aquino immediately nodded in fear. Good. Turning to Issei and Sirzechs, Grafia sighed before telling the two, your mother and father are waiting, Sirzechs. They called telling me to bring you both to them. Sirzechs squealed and lifted Issei up. I can't wait to tell mother about my little treasure. Forming a teleportation circle, Issei was left thinking to himself, D-Drag, what went wrong in that exam? Oh, that exam, I fell asleep and forgot to help you. Damn you, DDRIG. Don't you have an exam tomorrow? I can't wait to give you all the wrong answers. D-Drag wasn't going to help Issei. No, D-Drag was going to make sure that Issei would fail just to make him realize that this school shit was useless for him. Issei now knew that he needed to use a teleportation circle and telepathically tell Sirzechs about the questions and hope for a proper answer. Sirzechs told him that she was incredibly smart, not on the level of Ajuka, but enough so to be considered a genius in high school. Once they left, Rias and Aquino were left breathing heavily while Kiba and Kaneko were playing checkers. Wait, how do we even play this? Kaneko shrugged her shoulders. We bought the game, we can make the rules up. This is the Super Queen pieces, and I declare that it can change colors. And this piece is called the Knight in Shining Armor piece, and it auto-wins all games when moved, Kaneko declared. Shit. Rias and Aquino were left thinking to themselves about how bad it would be teaching Issei the basics in his classes. They didn't want to be in trouble by Grafia. Meeting the parents. Standing right in front of the Gremory residence, Issei looked straight at the mansion and gasped in amazement. It was just as big as Sirzech's palace, and the fact that the mansion had so many maids and butlers. Wait, why don't you have maids and butlers? Because I don't do much besides paperwork or being with you, Sirzechs casually said before everyone in the proximity bowed in her presence. Well, special perks of being Lucifer. Good thing I don't have to do that, Grafia muttered before standing beside Issei to make sure nothing bad happens to him. With Sirzechs on his right and Grafia on his left, Issei was properly secured. Taking a few steps into the residence, Issei was met with a similar long hallway with red carpets and overly expensive decorative paintings lined up on the walls. Sirzechs. Yes. Did you steal the idea of having a long hallway with red carpet and overly decorated walls from your parents? Obviously, it makes the entire palace feel at home. Issei muttered, yeah, and I wish I could make an expensive mansion and make it feel like home. Have a bunch of random nude women in magazine covering the walls. Sirzechs squinted her eyes at him. What was that? Nothing. Sirzechs wasn't having it. You have porn magazines. No. Grafia, please remind me to check Issei's room right after this to erase all those magazines. Sirzechs firmly asked her queen, who was listening with disappointment with Issei once more. Of course, we'll make sure to do so together. Wait, why don't we sell them, if I hypothetically have them? Because I have a feeling the longer I am near those magazines, the more I will have the feeling of punishing you, Sirzechs stated before noticing they were nearing her mother's room. All right, Issei. She didn't have a chance to finish her thought because Venelana walked right out of her room from hearing the commotion and noticed the three. When seeing her daughter, Venelana handed the pot that she was holding to a maid and ran to her daughter. Leaping into the air and hugging Sirzechs, Venelana was so glad to see her daughter once more, especially when she only visited a couple times a year. Little destruction, giving her daughter a bear hug, Venelana turned to see Issei right behind her daughter looking awkwardly at her. Mother, I'm so glad to see you again. Noticing her mother letting her go and seeing her walk towards Issei, she could only bite her lips when fearing for the worst. You're Issei. Yes, ma'am. Chuckling at the serious tone, Venelana carefully placed her hand on his cheek. No need to be so afraid. I'm only going to bite you. What? Sticking her tongue out, Venelana chuckled, just kidding. Sighing in relief, Issei got grabbed again and lifted up in the air. Sirzechs, he's so adorable. Where did you find one of these from? Mom, stop that. Sirzechs grabbed Issei from her mother and kept him in her arms. Venelana quickly grabbed him out of her arms and held him near her chest. Well, if you're going to marry him, then I get to spoil him like a son. Not only that, but we both have the same color hair. Nuzzling him to her cheek, Venelana was having way too much fun bothering her daughter. Oh, Issei, if you ever want to visit me, you can. What? Sirzechs had enough, with jealousy flaring inside her to a boiling point. She grabbed Issei and slammed him straight into her and held him tightly. She wasn't going to let her mother do anything to him. Issei, if you even dare to visit my mother without me, I will make sure you sleep in the couch. It didn't sound so bad to Issei. He could sleep peacefully without anyone disturbing him. And I will make your training purely sparring with me. Okay, that sounded terrible. Oh, my little destruction, don't be so harsh on him. Venelana patted Issei's head, causing Sirzechs to growl at her. He just wants someone to spoil him. Mom, don't you dare spoil him, that's my job. Issei was just left confused in why he was being treated like a child. Yo, Didrag, am I really going to be treated like a child? Yeah, what's the issue with this? You don't have pride to begin with, and you also get to be taken care of. What's the issue with this? Didrag was watching the scene with amusement and tiredness. He just woke up from a nap and woke up to this shit show. True, but I feel as if I'm not going to have free will when I'm around these three. Better them having control than you. If you were given freedom, you might burn the world down. Hey, I'm not that bad. You had an extra roll of paper towels, yet still stole the last paper towel roll in the other stall. You probably traumatized a grown man with that trick. I'm pretty sure you can't get any more evil than that. I just wanted to make sure that I was extra prepared. While Issei was mentally arguing with Didrag, Sirzechs continued arguing with her mother. Just look at him, he's so adorable and docile right now. Damn it, he's talking with Didrag again. Sirzechs began shaking Issei to bring him back to reality. Issei. Slapping her daughter lightly, Venelana lightly scolded her. Don't hurt him. It's very rare to find a man like him, someone willing to save the day. Sirzechs pouted, Mom, I'm not a child anymore. One thing, Sirzechs, her mother walked up to her and whispered into her ear, make a bunch of grand bobbies for me. I want to spoil so many of them. Sirzechs blushed like crazy and began stuttering and losing her grip on Issei. Looking down at Issei, she could only dream of what her kids would be like. Our first kid will be named Milicus. Oh, that is a wonderful name. Venelana clapped her hands and squealed with her daughter. I'm going to buy his clothings right now. Grafia was left sitting down with a beach chair and some sunglasses while watching the entire scene happen. Are they done yet? One of the maids shook their heads. Nope, I think they are talking about their potential third child's name. I'm in a room filled with idiots. Childhood friend. Tannen laughed with Surtur about what was happening with Issei. The young lad did it. This might be the first time where we will have a dragon hatchling and a devil being together. Not just a devil, the strongest devil of all time, Surtur added. Issei really does do the most random shit and scores the best. Something tells me someone is pulling the strings from somewhere for this to happen, Tannen added while traveling with Surtur towards Issei's location. Surtur laughed at Tannen's implications. Don't worry your little head about this. Now we have orders to be surveillance for Issei. Doesn't mean we can't troll him. Landing right in front of the palace, Issei bursted through the door and continued running. We need to leave. What? Why? Don't question it, we got an angry Lucifer behind us. Sirzechs followed with an angry aura that shot fear into the two giants. Get back here, you like my mother so much, then go to her then. I told you it was not like that. Grabbing onto Tannen and hiding behind his back, Issei poked his head out and grinned. Tell me what you going to do now. Sirzechs appeared behind Issei and grabbed him by the shirt. I can move faster than you can think. Oh, did anyone ever tell you that you look absolutely gorgeous? Sirzechs blushed before shaking her head and glaring. I'm immune to that shit now. Whoa, you got something stuck on your shit. Sirzechs looked confused and looked down. Issei took this chance and kissed her forehead and left her a blushing mess. That was a kiss. That was my lifesaver. Issei quickly nodded to Surtur and Tannen and teleported the fuck out of there with them. Sirzechs grabbed the spot where Issei kissed her and smiled brightly. I'm going to write that down somewhere and make sure to remember it for my entire life, Sirzechs screamed while running inside her palace, ignoring the fact that Issei escaped. Issei landed on the ground right in front of his house to see a few hooded figures right in front of him. Beside Issei was Tannen and Surtur, so he was fine if these two were threats. Who the hell are you two? We don't need to tell. Being interrupted by her friend, one of the hooded figures removed their hood and revealed a beautiful girl around Issei's age smiling brightly at him. Issei, I can't believe it is you. It has been forever since we last talked to each other. Yo Issei, you know this chick? Turning to Surtur and shaking his head, Issei was bamboozled with who this person was. Excuse me, but do I know you? Gasping in offense, the girl dramatically began crying. It's been a decade and you already forgot about me. Did I mean so little to you? Wait, no way, this can't be real. Issei began backing away. Rin. Squealing in happiness, Irina launched herself right into Issei and toppled over him. I knew you would remember. I missed you so much while I was away. Before she could continue any forth, Tannen intervened and lifted Irina off of Issei. Sorry, little one, but try not to be too close to Issei. Turning to see the huge dragon, Irina began shivering in fear and realizing who was in front of her. It was known throughout the supernatural world that there was a dragon king that sided with the devils, and knowing that Issei was now a devil thanks to the raiding game he participated in, Irina knew that this was Tannen. She didn't notice that the dragon, now she was noticing the other giant on the other side, since she was paying attention to Issei magically appearing in front of her. Sorry, Irina screamed before leaping away and standing right behind Zenovia. Tannen blinked a couple of times before beginning to laugh. Don't worry about me. I'm just here to make sure this idiot next to me doesn't do something stupid. I'm not going to hurt you unless if you step out of line. Zenovia still looked unamused and turned to Issei. Do you know who the ruler of this land is? Yes, why do you want to know? We have some very important business to speak with the rulers. Seeing as though this didn't involve Issei at all, Issei shrugged and said, Rias is near the school. Not only that, if you speak with one of them, the other ruler will show up. Zenovia nodded and began walking away with Irina clinging to her. However, Surtur appeared right in front of her. What business? Zenovia looked up at the giant, still unfazed. It does not concern you. Leaning down and staring right into her eyes, Surtur spoke. Between me and you, let's be real here. Tell me what is happening. The ruler of this land is my master. You are not worthy of meeting her. I will say this once more. Tell me what is happening now. Sensing the immense power behind Surtur, Zenovia began trembling. This power was on the power of Michael himself. Backing away until she tripped, causing her hoodie to fall, revealing her face, Zenovia looked up in slight fear. She didn't know who this person was, but this being's power was enough to bring fear that even the great Michael couldn't. I apologize. Zenovia got up and continued. I will tell you what is happening. The pieces of Excalibur have been stolen. Instead of being shocked, Tannen and Surtur snorted in amusement. Oh, the twigs have been stolen. Did you hear that, Tannen? It was about time that would happen. I'm surprised that someone didn't do it before. Zenovia was baffled with how easily they brushed off her statement. Are they idiots? Excalibur's pieces were missing. Some of the most powerful blades were missing. How can you say that? Excalibur is one of the most powerful blades in history. It being missing should be a crisis. Continuing to mock the girl, Surtur began shaking his arms in the air. Oh no, I'm SHAKNG boots. BUHHHHA. Little one, those toothpicks are far from being deadly to us higher beings. Tannen's nails are probably more dangerous than those toothpicks. The moment that the great sword of Arthur was shattered, the fear of that blade shattered with it. Cockabeel is the suspect behind stealing them. Dropping the bomb, both Tannen and Surtur stopped laughing and realized that this could be an issue. You could have started with that. Surtur nodded to Tannen and walked towards him. Issei, this is a command. Rush to Rias' Gremory and make sure you two are near each other. At least you both can protect each other for now. We will speak with Sirzechs about this. Issei nodded, knowing there was no room for arguing. With that, the two behemoths disappeared behind a teleportation circle, leaving Issei and the two church women behind. I think things are going to get very bad soon. Sorry, Sirzechs. Issei continued running straight towards Rias' location. Once arriving right in front of the occult building, Issei noticed the lights are half turned off and turned on and assumed the worst, busting through the door with his chest high in the air and screaming, "I am here." Rias was currently reading one of the books that was assigned for her to write an essay on. Seeing a flying door slamming right into her face and taking her off to the sky, Rias sighed before slamming right into the ground. "Issei, why are you here?" Holding in her annoyance, Rias spoke through the hole in her wall. "Cockabeel is on the move." Issei didn't know who that guy was, but he sure as hell knew that he was a problem to shut Surtur up. "What?" Rias screamed, alerting Aquino, who was upstairs getting ready for bed. AKNO. Rushing downstairs with only a towel, Aquino landed on the ground and looked around with concern until seeing Issei. Looking confused, Aquino stood back up and turned to Rias. "What's wrong?" "Get Kaneko and Kiba here now, we have a serious emergency. Cockabeel is on the move and he's in my territory." Aquino gasped before nodding immediately. Before they could do anything, a light spear rammed straight through the wall and pierced straight through the ground. It narrowly missed Issei, but it was a sign meaning that the battle had begun. Busting through the wall with his hands, Issei noticed an army of fallen angels floating in the air. "What the hell?" Rias screamed before noticing what Issei was looking at. "Shit, looks like we're surrounded. Aquino, double trouble begin." Aquino and Rias nodded before blasting the area with their auras, sending aura of destruction and strikes of lightning throughout the area before merging together to create a spiral energy disk that began sending chaos everywhere. They were already placed in an alternate dimension thanks to whoever trapped them, but the sheer power behind Rias and Aquino's combined attack began blasting away at the army of fallen angels. Once tiring themselves out, Rias and Aquino were blasted away from each other, crashing into the ground before skidding to a stop. "Okay, maybe we should practice that attack more." Agreed. Aquino slammed her head straight into the ground. Looking at the destruction that the two created, Issei was impressed seeing the total annihilation that they caused onto the army. Boosting to his max, Issei rushed at the nearest fallen and smashed the head of the fallen, crushing it and causing for the fallen to explode in feathers. "Oh, shit!" Issei realized that he just killed the fallen, but he didn't have time to process it because a light spear rushed straight at him. Dodging the light spear and knowing that he needed to defeat the fallen angels since he didn't need to see blood, he just needed to aim to kill the fallens in one blow. Rushing to the next, pushing his hands straight out, "Wait, stop!" Blasting the angel into nothingness, Issei watched as the fallen behind were also incinerated. "They are all low-class fallen. Is that why they are dying in one shot?" Drake nodded before noticing the sheer number. Cockabeel must have sent them to defeat Rias and her peerage. They may not have the power to defeat her peerage, but it would have been enough to drain them of all their powers, especially when one single combined attack from the king and queen was enough to drain them. Drake was disappointed in Rias and Aquino's magic endurance. "Drake, you able to boost me to the max for a few minutes?" "Yeah, just finish the fight already. The more I watch, the more aggravated I get in seeing such weaklings trying to kill my host. It wounds my pride that they didn't send someone strong to fight against you." Feeling even more power entering him, Issei began going on a one-hit killing spree. He didn't have time to dwell on what was happening. He needed to make sure that he was safe. Blow after blow, feather began dropping as the screams of the fallen died down to nothing but the wind blowing against Issei's face. They tried shooting him with spears, but Issei was so far ahead of their power that the spears simply disintegrated upon touching his skin. Issei was pure strength and speed with barely any magic capabilities. His body was built to withstand such pitiful attacks against him. There were a few fallen angels that escaped, but Issei didn't care about them. Once the barrier around them got removed and the fallen angels were no longer in front of him, he turned to see Rias and Aquino finishing blasting the fallen angels behind him. They had gotten up a little after he began his massacre and began helping him blasting them into nothingness. Looking around to see if there was any signs of Cockabeel around, Issei found no one. Shrugging his shoulders, Issei powered down and walked to the two. "How are you two holding up?" "We're fine," Rias screamed while glaring at Aquino. "Yeah, perfectly fine," Aquino glared back at Rias. "What the hell did I miss?" "A fallen angel said that my chest was bigger than hers," Aquino said while puffing her chest up, "and I agree." "Mine is bigger." "No, mine is." Mine. "Issei, whose chest is bigger?" Rias asked with Aquino nodding. "Your sister's and your mother's." With that, Issei walked out of the building, leaving a bamboozled Aquino and shocked Rias. On his way back home, Issei continued kicking a rock while singing with D-Drag in his mind. Once arriving at his house, Issei noticed the lights were turned off and looked confused. It was a little too early for his mother and father to be asleep. Opening the door and noticing the house being dark, Issei chuckled, "Mom, come on, stop trying to scare me. I know you're up." He didn't hear anyone say anything. "Mom, where the hell are you?" Blinking a couple times, Issei walked into the house. Berserk. Walking into the living room, Issei looked down to see blood. Backing away, Issei watched as his mother's lifeless face was left on the couch with blood escaping down to the ground, seeping into the carpet. Next to her was his father's corpse with a hole straight through his stomach. Walking hesitantly to the corpses with tears filling up his eyes, Issei could only mutter one word, "Mom." "Partner, I'm sorry." Even D-Drag was shocked in seeing this happen. This couldn't have happened. This shouldn't have happened at all. "Mom, wake up." Issei shook his mother's body, hoping for her to wake up and say that this was just a prank. No signs of her waking up. No signs of his father breathing. They were both dead. The two most precious to him were gone, and what he didn't know was the person behind the murder. Lifting his mother's corpse, Issei began shaking violently. So many emotions began running through his mind before it all changed to anger. He was right in front of the house. He was right here to protect his parents if he didn't listen to Surtur. It was his fault. Anger began raging through his mind as the boosted gear began subconsciously powering up. His body began ripping apart with the flesh tearing through the skin as his power was too immense for his body to handle, but he didn't care. He felt numb to it all. Looking down at his hand, watching the bones in his body shining brightly with his blood turning a pitch-black color, his blood began trailing off him, bleeding through the ceiling. His body began growing while little orbs began surrounding him. D-Drag knew that he should be stopping his partner, but feeling the sheer darkness inside his partner, he knew that it was too late to save him. All he could do was telepathically send a message to Sirzechs about Issei. Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker. Forcefully transforming into the balance breaker form, the chant began. "I who am about to awaken. It started, looks like it will start. Am the heavenly dragon who has stolen the principles of domination from God. It was always like that no matter what. That's not right, it was like that every time. I laugh at the infinite and I fret over the dream. The one the world seeks, the one the world rejects. I shall become the red dragon of domination. It was always power, it was always love. You guys choose destruction no matter how many times. And I shall sink you to the depths of the crimson purgatory." With the scream mixed of a broken man and a broken dragon, Issei had achieved the form that was forbidden. Juggernaut Drive. Standing at an immense height, easily breaking through his ceiling, Issei watched as his mother's and father's corpses were beginning to melt from the sheer heat that he was creating. Issei blasted into the air and looked down at the sky. This wasn't just the ordinary Juggernaut Drive, this was a mutation built up the sorrows and sheer anger that Issei held. His anger continued soaring through the roof as his body mutated the Juggernaut Drive to be more of a titanic humanoid dragon, similar to the build of Tannin but far more powerful. Floating in the air, Issei, with whatever sanity he had left, noticed a bright barrier at his school. Blasting straight to the barrier, Issei was left with one thought. Kill all. With Sona and her peerage, they were left holding the barrier up with their magic as Rias and her peerage, add in the two holy women, fought against Cockabeel himself. They had called for reinforcements from her sister and Rias' sister. "Sona, we can't keep this up for much longer. We just need to push a little longer. It's either we die with the city or we live to see another day," Sona demanded while pushing with all her might, but in a single second, the barrier shattered with a new being blasting through, nullifying all their efforts. "What the hell?" Saji screamed while being blown away with the rest of the peerage. Just a few minutes before the chaos began, Rias, who was trying to converse long enough with Cockabeel to stall time for her sister to show up, pointed her finger at Cockabeel. "Enough of this, leave now and never return." She was running out of things to say against the cadre. "Oh, this is rich. You have been throwing nothing but childish insults at me and expect for me to take you seriously. Hurry up and bring your sister here." Cockabeel mocked Rias while sitting on his floating throne. I'm almost falling asleep from how weak you all are." She needed at least Issei to be here. With him, they could potentially work together to make a killer shot to maybe one-shot the cadre at a vital spot. However, Cockabill waved his hand and yawned before dropping the bomb. "I wonder how that red dragon liked his present from yours truly." What? It was foolish for him to believe that his parents were safe once he revealed himself to the supernatural world. Once I knew who he related to, it was easy as breaking his will with a few dead parents. Mommy and Daddy won't be giving him any Christmas presents anymore. Cockabill barked in laughter before landing on the ground with his wings spread in the air. "I can't wait to kill you all. With the red dragon having no will to fight, you all have no one to rely on until your sister shows up." Throwing a quick light spear, Rias was pushed out the way by Aquino, who took the spear straight on, resulting in it piercing straight through her shoulder. The spear ripped her right arm straight off, causing her to let out a painful screech. "Oh, I hit two of you." Hearing he hit two, Rias turned around to see Kaneko having her right leg ripped straight off, leaving her shocked in seeing so much blood escaping her body. In seconds, she collapsed and dropped to the ground, spazzing out. Well, time to kill the circus leader. Throwing the next light spear, it was met with a massive figure who slammed straight into the ground between Rias and Cockabill. Standing at a staggering height that dwarfed them all, the figure looked down at Cockabill and stayed motionless. "Who is this?" Cockabill lost his smile when sensing the immense power behind the being. The power began getting his blood boiling at excitement, began coursing through his body. "Finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary." Throwing hundreds of light spears in seconds, Cockabill watched as none of them did a single thing to the being. The being took one step and shattered the entire schoolyard as the winds released from the being blinded all. Cockabill felt fear for the first time because behind the figure was a massive holographic image of D-Drake filled with rage. "Partner, kill him. Issei, don't leave me." Sirzechs was lying down on her bed with her pillow right under head chin while swinging her legs in the air behind her. She was having the time of her life after the kiss that Issei gave her. That kiss cemented their marriage for good. Before she could say anything about her day, she got a telepathic message from D-Drake. "Lucifer, Issei needs you now." Not questioning anything, Sirzechs quickly got up and teleported to wherever D-Drake had sent the message from. Once arriving at Issei's house, Sirzechs was met with a sight that she had hoped would never happen. The corpses of Issei's parents. Sirzechs frantically tried sensing Issei's energy and sensed a powerful force moving at immense speeds towards the school which her sister went to. Taking off her armor, Sirzechs frowned. Meanwhile, Cockabill and Issei faced off against each other, both unmoving until Cockabill tried throwing a larger light spear at Issei. In a second, Cockabill was down into the ground with his wings ripped off. The speed that Issei moved at was incomprehensible to the likes of Cockabill. Without having the time to register the AHHHH before he could finish his screams, Issei grabbed his jaw before ripping it straight off. Blood began oozing into a puddle on the grass, dyeing it a deep crimson color. Before Cockabill had the chance to recover, Issei lifted him by the head to stare into his pale white eyes. "Partner, end it." Hearing the voice, Cockabill smiled before spitting. "So, this is the red dragon. How was my present?" Still speaking even with his jaw ripped off, Cockabill didn't care. He wanted to make sure that he would take Issei with him if he was to die. If he couldn't make chaos, he would make sure that Issei would take the mantle in his new Juggernaut drive form. He had already won in his eyes. The Excalibur wielder was already killed off by the sheer heat that Issei created when moving right past him to reach Cockabill. This left the holy blade right in the middle. Cockabill needed to reach the sword, creating two light spears and slamming together to create a blinding light that momentarily stunned Issei. Cockabill dove straight to the sword and grabbed it. Raising the sword in his hands, Cockabill laughed before throwing himself right at Issei. Swinging the sword vertically to slice him in half, Cockabill was met with Issei's armor stopping the sword the moment that it made contact with him. What? Issei grabbed the sword and snapped it in half. Hundreds of years of humans' strongest weapon being glorified to being snapped in half by the sheer power of the heavenly dragon. Issei raised his titanic arms and slammed them straight into Cockabill's body. A screech of pain and bone crunching engulfed the battlefield at Cockabill's spin was compressed to the point where his body was compressed to half his height. Nearly all of his bones in his body were shattered from a single slam Issei produced. For the first time, Cockabill felt fear. The pain that he felt was reaching points where he was phasing in and out of consciousness from the pain itself. Don't die yet. Cockabill tried to remain calm. He tried to stay strong in front of this being of monstrosity. Issei moved his hands to Cockabill's eyes and ripped them out without any resistance. My eyes, Cockabill continued screaming as Issei slammed him into the ground head first. Lifting him up, he slammed him again. And again. And again. Letting the fallen go, Issei looked into his eyes. Cockabill was barely moving as his entire body was mangled up with his eyes pouring blood out the empty sockets. Issei looked down at Cockabill before crashing his fist straight into Cockabill's face. Crunch! Feathers were seen blowing away by the wind as Issei was left in the middle of the battlefield alone. In seconds before Issei could do anything, Sirzechs Lucifer had entered the arena. Standing right in front of her little sister, Sirzechs widened her eyes in seeing the monstrosity her beloved had turned into. When seeing Sirzechs, Issei screeched in agony, roaring in pure anger and sadness before blasting away into the sky. Turning around, Sirzechs saw Akino and Kaniko's state and looked at Rias. Take your peerage along with Sona and get out of here. Rias hesitated because she wanted to be useful as well, but she knew when she was a hindrance. Grabbing Akino and Kaniko, she flew away in hopes of contacting Grafia for some phoenix tears. Sirzechs watched as Issei dove straight at her in hopes of catching her off guard while she finished talking to her sister. Pushing his large fist away, Sirzechs didn't want to hurt her little Issei. Dodging more of her attacks, she couldn't help but caress his metallic head in sadness. She couldn't hold herself to hurt Issei. She couldn't do that. Sirzechs. Dodging another attack, she heard the faint voice of D-Drake's voice coming from the titanic armor covering Issei. What is it, D-Drake? Issei continued getting frustrated before grabbing Sirzechs and throwing her into the sky. You need to stop holding back. You need to take Issei out now. Condensing all his energy into one attack, boosting the attack to the maximum he could, Issei began changing the color of the atmosphere with the attack. Maximum transfer. Moving all the energy into his mouth, D-Drake's voice radiated with dominance throughout town. Heavenly tears rupture the skies. An ear-rupturing sound followed by a powerful crimson blast covered in blackish flames flowed through Issei's mouth as it changed the color of the sky to a bright crimson color as Sirzechs was engulfed by the attack. Sirzechs looked deeply into Issei's eyes as she saw one single tear flowing down his face through the armor. An explosion with such magnitude that it blew away the clouds and caused wind speeds so massive that the weather itself changed to a storm. The explosion shook not just the earth itself but the many dimensions within the supernatural world. Through the smoke, Sirzechs was seen holding her hand out filled with the power of destruction. The sheer power of destruction within her nullified the force behind Issei's attack. There was no need to hold back. Her beloved Issei was in pain, and she needed to make it stop as soon as possible. The world itself felt as if it was tearing itself apart as the ground began shaking with cracks opening filled with molten lava spewing out into the air. The winds began picking up the pace, blasting the surface at speeds irregular to the earth itself. The tides around began violently shaking as Sirzechs has finally transformed into the humanoid destruction. Being one with the power of annihilation, Sirzechs simply held her hand out and appeared behind Issei. Sleep, placing her hand on his armor and shattering the armor itself and forcefully changing Issei back into his base form, Sirzechs watched as her little Issei dropped down onto the ground with blood covering his entire body. Cuts, burns, and his flesh openly ripping his skin apart were the sights that Sirzechs was met with and horrified with. Dropping to her knees, reverting back to her base form, Sirzechs held Issei in her arms as she had tears rolling down her body. There was a chance that Issei would never be able to recover from this. She didn't care. She will always be there for him. However, Azazel was in for destruction because Sirzechs was seeing only red.